we don't live here. We could. We definitely could. Maybe that's the next one. Maybe the next one we'll set up dorms.
Maybe. Yeah, there's always the rooftop.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess, okay, well, I don't want you to get addicted.
Well, I've heard you're a very good golfer. That's why I'm asking.
Well, just keep that light going. But I can play okay. You know, I've hit a lot of golf shots.
What's like your handicap? Jamie won't know what that means.
Now it's about 12. The lowest I ever was about 7.
Pretty good if you're playing.
Yeah, means I can play a little bit.
Yeah.
And now it's what's the word? Diminishing. It's going lower because I've figured something out. There's a great book. These ladies, I got Pia Nilsson and Lynn. Pia Nilsson's an easy one to remember, but whatever Lynn's last name, they wrote a great book called Every Shot Must Have a Purpose. Did you ever read that one? Well, I should talk about them because they really are onto something, and it's about quieting your brain when you play. Which I always thought I'd get better as my brain softened.
Right.
It seemed to be happening. My brain was softening, and it was maybe getting better, but not fast enough for me. And then I started following what these ladies have to write. They were Annika's teachers at one time, and Annika Sorenstam. She's a famous golfer.
Oh, okay.
Swedish.
Every shot must have
There
a
it
purpose.
is. And there's the forward by Annika. Anyway, Lynn Marriott. How can I'm blocking that because it's a hotel name. I didn't used to be a member of the Marriott Club, but okay, so that's a great book, and they've written a bunch of stuff. That they know some stuff.
So what
try that one, Jamie?
What does it change?
Cool. It made me enjoy. I enjoy golf. I've always had a lot of fun, but that made me enjoy golf even more.
How so? Like, what is it?
You know, it's decluttering. You know, it's like when you do it in your life.
Yo, what's up, Biggs? Yeah, I'm just messing around, man.
You talk about
it's like work, though. Like walking up to this and like setting it up. This is like work.
To distract you.
At least it feels like it. It's like, dang, this one's gonna be like tough. It's gonna take like focus. It's definitely
and
like
if you're
work.
Trying to do something that's pretty straightforward, whether it's stir grits or sew a line, something, or play a game of golf, in which ideally you only have to hit the ball like 75 times if everything that distracts you from that is a problem. So it's the ability to like sort of just pull the weeds out of your head, as I read a Japanese man say once, and attend to it when you attend to it. It's a few hours to play a run of golf, like you say. It takes a little time, but the actual playing of the game is only minutes. The actual hitting of the ball is only minutes. Like an NFL game could take like 3 hours on TV, but it's like 20 minutes of action. Right. So it's similar to that in golf, or anything, that you have to sort of return to yourself to hit the ball. You got to come back, get it back together to hit the ball or do anything. And so you you have the freedom in between the shots to move and to speak and to tell jokes and smoke cigars and whatever you want to do. But when you want to hit the ball, this is about you're going to think, you make a little plan, and you separate that. You sort of inculcate that, you take it in, and then you separate that and you step up and you hit the thing. And hitting the thing is only hitting the thing. And that, if you can do that, then you start having real success with the actual hitting. And the sort of joy of the sort of mind-body connection and all this sort of aesthetic, all the kind of like, almost spiritual things about a mind-body exercise, a game, come to you, Like, when you're great athletes say they're in a zone, they're not in a zone. They're really conscious. They're really connected. They're really aware. It's more than a zone. It's like the ideal place to be.
Right. And what is it about their writing that helped you? Like, what is their philosophy that helped, like, steer you more towards being able to do that?
Well, for an example, it's like something that can keep you in your body, because you have to stay in your body. I believe that anyway. I already believe that. But so you got this dreidel here, right? So imagine it's a golf ball. One thing that they sort of say was like you would just, in between shots, you would just take your golf ball, if you're on a putting green or if you have a spare one in your pocket, and you just toss it up and catch it. Toss it up and catch it. That keeps you like physically aware of, I've got to do this and that. I've got to do these two things, so I've got to have my attention in my body. I've got to stay home, you know. So if you can stay in your body, it all begins in the body. Everything we are, or everything we hope to be, everything we dream about, it's all within the skin. So you got to stay within the skin. So if you can make yourself come back, if you can get yourself back inside, you don't have so far to go to achieve your intended goal. You know?
Right.
You don't have to like drag yourself back from outer space. You're not dreaming over there. I'm in my body already, so I'm close. You know, does that make sense, Jim?
Yes.
So, and you know, I've had some discussions with Pia, and she said, well, that's what the great golfers are doing. They are pulling themselves back into this thing. That's why they hit so many good shots. It's because they're home. You know, they're home. You know, so that's sort of what I got out of her, and I sort of learned and believe that from other venues, but I never had it put in with practical applications like they give for golf. You know, you think of golf as like, oh, I can be willy-nilly out here. I can be fun, or I can be aggressive, or I can be competitive, or whatever the hell. All that stuff is so real. That's emotion kind of thing. But if you're not in the body, good luck.
Okay. Ready. Some things are hard to do yourself. Switching to H&R Block isn't one of them.
Right.
You know, and it's only like that.
Well, there's a great joy in things that take you away from the rest of the world because they require so much of your attention. That's what I get out of pool, and that's what I get out of archery too. I practice archery, but there's things that require so much focus while you're doing them, and you have to be in your body. You have to be synchronized.
I would imagine archery would be one of the more challenging ones.
Very challenging.
Yeah.
It's very challenging because you're supposed to have as little movement as possible upon the execution of the shot. So there's all these strategies.
Yeah. They started televising it lately. It's really cool to watch.
Oh,
it's very cool to watch.
Yeah.
And they've got them, cameras are right on their face and just the torso, just like this. And you're like, God dang, that's beautiful. That's as good a close-up as any Robin Hood movie ever had. It's just great.
No, I love watching it. I watch it on YouTube all the time. There's these Las Vegas shootouts where they have 3 targets and they have 30 different shots. So they're trying to get an X 30 different times. And they're standing next to the best archers in the world. Everyone's at probably like 20 meters. And they're all just focusing, like dead still, completely calm, focusing.
What's that? Where do you find that?
Oh, you can find it, like, go to Lancaster Archery, Vegas, and they have what they call a Vegas face. So a Vegas face is 3 targets.
Live?
Oh, yeah.
But they've got to have like big screens because you can't see the faces from a distance, right?
No.
And you don't want to get between the arrows, of course.
No, you definitely don't. People bring binoculars. All the archers have binoculars, and they all pull them up after each shot because they're looking for precise distances, and then they'll make slight adjustments on their scope and their sight and move, and then they'll take a breath but it's just.
So do you have one of those Massivo?
Yes, this is exactly what it's
those
like.
Things don't even look fair.
So these guys are all on this line and they're all firing, and the amount of pressure is insane because really the guy who makes money out of this thing is the guy who wins first place. Everything else is not so good. There's not a lot of money in archery. Look at the audience.
It's like about 60 guys.
Yeah, not a lot of audience, right?
Yeah, it's not a crowd, please.
So this is just for real, complete archery fanatics who are absolutely lost in this connection between your mind, your body, and the flight of the arrow, the mystical flight of the arrow.
That's interesting. Can you go back and freeze that? There.
Yeah.
Can you lose the line on the bottom? So that's just interesting to me to look at.
Yeah.
Like their weight balance. Just to look at like who's on his sort of half his front foot
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. They have a little bit more weight on their back foot. Is that right?
Well, we're catching this in mid-draw, so he might settle. Yeah, see that guy that you were looking at who was like that?
Yeah,
That's got brazier on his back. Watch.
Yeah.
He'll settle, so he'll draw, and as he draws, he arches back, and now watch, he'll settle forward. See, he was settling as the angle changed of the camera shot. But they want to ideally be about 50-50, and you're just staying calm, keeping it as steady as possible.
Is that guy in the wheelchair shooting too?
Yes. There's a guy that shoots with just his feet. The guy who doesn't have arms, and he's unbelievably accurate.
I've seen that guy.
Yeah, he shoots with his toes. So what these guys are doing is it's just a perfect balance of technique and focus and attention, and they're actually trying to get what's called a surprise shot. They're not executing the shot like you would like a rifle trigger. Most of these guys use what's called a hinge, and so that's what they're going for. They're looking for. So with a hinge, you don't make the hinge. You don't make the release go off like with a button, where you press a button. It's just a rotation of the handle, and you don't know when it's going to go off. So you draw it back.
So you're not
this.
like letting go with your fingers?
No. You have a metal release in your hand that has a hook, and the hook is attached to a sear.
By just
By rotating it breaks. And so the hook breaks. And so see, or some of them use a thumb, like that guy with the yellow and black, that guy. So he's got a thumb trigger. So what he's doing is he's setting the trigger, the barrel of the trigger, right where his thumb is, and he's just using the pulling of his arm to make it go off. He's not executing it with his thumb. Now there's a small select
that's why
group.
they all look different when they're on the release.
Yes, but they all, their arms all fly backwards. If you see how their arm moves backwards, that's indicative of a surprise shot. That means they're executing it perfectly. So as they're pulling back,
is that they don't know when it's going to go.
Exactly. You're just executing the technique, which is the pull with the back muscles. You're pulling with your rhomboids, and then it slowly goes up.
Guy right there.
See, like that guy with the black hat? Watch. See his fingers, how it's curling? See how it goes off? So that's just from his hand curling that's making the shot go off.
But they get it to the position or the area where it's going to go.
Yes.
And they've got to be right. They've got to be poised forward.
But the idea is, if you think about it going off and you make it go off, there's some sort of a recoil. So there's some sort of an anticipation of that recoil, and when you're shooting that precisely, that anticipation of that recoil might make a difference of an inch or two left or right. Yes, sure. That tension.
So you try to not anticipate. So
yes.
Surprise you.
When you are doing that, you do not think about anything else. It clears your mind. When you are just concentrating on that target, you cannot think about your bills.
And so you do it.
Yes.
And when a thought does come into your head, you don't hit the target.
Yes, but it doesn't come in your head. It can't. It's too hard. The process of aiming is so engrossing when you lock in place and you're aiming and then you're pulling back with the shot, like you're all in. You're all there. Especially if you're good. If you're good, that is the only thing you're thinking of. And there's a moving meditation aspect to it, a cleansing of your mind. Your worries go away, your thoughts, the things that are bugging you, and I gotta do this, and I gotta call that guy back, and all of it goes away. Because it's so engrossing. It requires so much of you.
How do you affect that yourself? How do you move that away from the incidental thoughts that pop in?
Well, it's just the difficulty of it. Yeah, the difficulty of it actually sort of facilitates your meditative mindset. Because if you're going to do it right, there's no other way to do it. You literally can't be thinking about other things while you're doing it.
Well, it's not unlike golf. Like if you're thinking about what you're going to pick up on the way home.
Exactly.
You're not going to go.
Same as pool. When, I play pool at a pretty high level, like I bet that book would be very beneficial to me. I bet there's some techniques and strategies of how to focus yourself and completely remove yourself from the rest of the world and just think about this mind-body connection and the execution of this thing that you're trying to do.
All right, I'm going to try to do that. I know I don't play enough pool, but I did I had to shoot some pool in Groundhog Day, so I got with like a guy who's a pool expert, and he just gave me drills to do.
Do you remember his name?
No, but if he remembers, he should say hi. Anyway, he taught me a bunch of things, and I'm still very disappointed because when we actually shot the scene, I think I sank like 9 balls and 7 balls, 8 balls in 3 shots. And I went, we got that, and the cinematographer was like, well, let's set it up here. I'll set up a different shot. I said, what are you talking about? He had half of the table.
Oh no.
All right, I'm gonna take a leak again.
Okay. You want to wrap it up? We can wrap it up.
No, that's okay.
Okay. All right. Take a leak and come back. All right.
I keep asking them any suggestions. They say, well, tell some stories.
You should never ask for suggestions.
So where do you come from?
I was born in New Jersey, went to high school in Boston, lived all over the country, lived in San Francisco for a while when I was a kid, Florida.
Were you military or something?
No, mother got divorced, married my stepfather, he was going to school, went to San Francisco for that, then Florida, and then eventually Boston.
Well, that's pretty good. I mean, I think I always wanted to live in San Francisco.
Well, I was in San Francisco during the Vietnam War. In the height of the hippie days when I was a little kid. It's pretty wild. It was a very interesting time to be there, you know? It was a crazy place.
Yeah, well, that's what Hunter was talking about, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, my brother was there, too. He went to school out there at St. Mary's in Moraga.
Okay.
And so, but it turned out he was spending a lot of time in Berkeley.
Yeah.
He wasn't doing that much studying. But what a life he had out there. What a fantastic time to have been there. And my other friend went to high school at that time, somewhere around there, and I envied that. And I really like San Francisco, and I was there recently. I saw Father Guido Sarducci.
Oh, wow.
And had dinner with him and Roman Coppola, and we went to an old place called like Macaroni or something like that, old Italian place, and it was really delightful. I just love San Francisco, and I have friends who were like, and we started talking about politics a long time ago, like for political reasons, they all love San Francisco, they've ruined San Francisco. I said, well, and so I was there, and I know there's homeless people in San Francisco now, and lots of them, and there's homeless people in Los Angeles and Santa Monica and anywhere that is warm.
Yeah.
Especially, and California's the most populous state, but I don't think it's a political choice. I mean, I think, isn't it? I don't know the stats, but these people don't. It's more of a mental health thing.
It's definitely a mental health issue.
It's not anybody's politics that are making people crazy.
No, well, it's
not making people live on the street. But I know. I'm sticking up for San Francisco, saying it's still. I mean, San Francisco survived the beatniks. It survived the hippies. It survived the earthquake. It survived AIDS. It survived everything. It's like a resilient, extraordinary place, you know.
It's still got a lot of extraordinary aspects to it. The problem is they kind of encourage people to sleep on the streets and shit anywhere they want, and they didn't do anything about it, and it just
got. You really think they encourage people?
Well, they definitely make it financially viable for them to do it. They give them money to do it.
Well, that sounds like they're paying them the shit on the street.
No, they're paying them so that they don't have to be poor or homeless. I mean, they have a tent and they'll help them. They'll subsidize this existence. What they need is more mental health care. It's a mental health issue. Drug addiction and mental health. That's the real problem.
Yeah.
And when you don't address it and then you just allow people to camp anywhere you want, you're almost sort of encouraging mental health problems to be everywhere, all throughout, and just be throughout the entire city. It's just a lack of empathy for the people. If you're empathetic for them, you don't let them just camp out and shit on the street. What you do is you try to say, hey, obviously we have a real problem. This needs to be addressed for the greater good of the city and for these people. They need mental health care. They need addiction care. It's a real problem that needs to be addressed. You can't just leave them out in the street and let them do whatever they want and become a hazard for everybody else. Then it makes the city kind of fucked up.
Well, I don't know I mean, you know, when you speak, it sounds like more of a political choice.
No.
Someone's saying, well, it sounds like you're saying they're being paid to shit out of the streets and
I'm not saying
become
they're
mentally
being
ill.
paid to shit on the streets. They
I
are
always felt like
mentally
mental
ill.
illness happened first before living on the street.
Unquestionably. It's
And-
all during the Reagan administration when they opened up the mental health institutes and just let people out in the streets.
Well, it started before that in New York, and that was my experience in New York. Was like Rockefeller, way back when, and I could be wrong, but this is how it was attributed. Sort of closed up the mental health hospitals and pushed these many people out on the streets.
Yeah.
That had nowhere to go, and it wasn't a poverty situation, although it looks like it when you look at it. It's really a mental health situation, and a great number of these people have no interest in going into a place.
Right.
They would just as soon live on the street. Their life is like an interior monologue that they can't control, and living in a home is no different than living on the street. The thing is still going on. The conversation is still going on inside the brain.
But there has to be a solution for it.
Well,
You want high-performance, long-lasting, affordable tools. You want Harbor Freight tools. Whatever you do it for less at Harbor Freight. Save like never before. That's
okay. Well, so I don't disagree that
Right.
there has to be a solution, but I don't think that people are. This is sort of like where, I'd like to think about. Let's not talk politics. Let's agree
Right.
like what we can agree on. So that solution is like, this is where the great minds of California or the United States need to come together and say, okay, why don't we solve these problems that are common to every state has a city that has X number of people living on the street, whether it's Yankton, whether it's, Minneapolis, whether it's, Louisville, whatever. Everyone's got like a street scene situation that's rough like that. And it's hard to say, you say there's got to be a solution. Where's that going to come from? And who's going to believe it? If it comes from this direction or that direction or this side or that side, how do you like evaporate the walls of separation and say, like, how do we get the right people with the right minds to solve these questions? These are real things, and people argue about them when you and I are not arguing, but we're talking about it,
Yeah.
and neither one of us are sleeping on the street.
Right.
We both feel compassion for it, empathy for it, but how do you get people that are far removed, and we could say we're far removed from it, to like allow the solution to take place?
From one side or the other.
From one side,
Yeah.
any side, who gives a damn who's got it right?
Well, it has to be a completely bipartisan thing. We have to look at it in terms of the health of human beings in our community, right? This country is supposed to be our community. These people that are on the street, they are sad, sick people in our community. And some real effort has to be taken to try to change that instead of just enable them to keep doing it. That's all I'm saying. I just don't think that the solution is let them camp wherever they want, let them shit in the
You can't
streets.
argue. I'm not arguing. There's no argument for what you're saying.
No, I don't
There's
think
no
you are
argument.
arguing.
So you were in this situation. You had this, people call it a platform or a place where you invite people to come here that can speak to lots of people.
Yeah.
How many people watch your show?
A lot.
So there's lots of people watching your show, and when there's people that make sense, you hear it. It rings a bell. It sounds like that. I wish I knew the answer to solving these things. And occasionally, like I say, you see people with these problem solvers, and the problem solvers come. But people want to choose their own problem solver. It's
There's also money in being a problem solver. That's the problem. One of the big parts of the problem in California in particular is that there's an enormous budget to deal with the homeless. So you have these people that work in these departments that are making $250,000 a year that are just working on the homeless problem, which keeps getting worse every year. There's no incentive to fix anything or change anything, and it's a bunch of bureaucracy. There's a lot of bullshit that gets involved in the business. A buddy of mine is a lawyer who went to San Francisco, and he was disturbed by it all. He's like, this is so crazy. Like, what is missing? Do we need more funding? And they're like, no, and this guy explained to him, no, they literally have an incentive to keep the homeless problem. There's an enormous number of people that are making a fantastic living in dealing with the
Who's
homeless
making
issue.
money on the homeless?
Well, there's a giant list of people. We can pull it up if you want to say.
Well,
We don't need to call them out, but
I don't
there's a bunch
Just tell
of
me,
people.
like, who makes money on the homeless?
The people that are involved in these organizations that are dealing with the homeless, whether it's in Los Angeles or in San Francisco.
You mean, are they like government?
Yes,
They're all
it's government jobs, yes. It's all funded by the state. And there's real jobs, like real money. And nothing gets done, nothing changes. In fact, it gets worse every year. Something needs to be done that shows results. Like, what is that? I think it's got to be compassionate. It's got to be something that both the left and the right can agree to.
So I'm trying to follow you.
Okay.
God knows I'm trying. So
I have an argument.
So no, I think we were talking earlier about the agents versus the architects or something like that. You used a word that explained like the people who are like coming up with this sort of thing. It's like, and I was watching something, and I've really tried to avoid watching the news lately, but I saw someone talking about, and it was someone that works, and you say the word bureaucracy, and it's a loaded word, and we all hate bureaucracy. There's just the word of it.
Yeah.
Gives you like a creepy feeling.
Frustrating word.
Yeah. And so, it's like being on hold for Amtrak or whatever the hell it is, there's someone, oh, please God, come back. Okay, so, please God, come back. So the idea that, and so this person was talking about the cuts that are going to come and to talk about eliminating a bureaucracy. And I don't know what particular department this person was in or not.
That's not what this person was talking about.
You're
talking about a different person.
It's a different person. I don't know what your person is. But this is my person.
Okay.
So my person is saying the bureaucracy is like, the bureaucracy gets sort of like fed from above somehow or other. It's fed by these people that are the architects of one side or the other. But the actual bureaucracy includes the people that can solve the problem. Like encased in this bureaucracy are people that can solve the problems. And that if you just sort of, I'm not saying this is the case, but if you sort of just like zip a bunch of the bureaucracy out, you run the risk of zipping out some of the people that actually have the brains to do the solutions. And what this person said was, the solution to the bureaucracy is within the bureaucracy that is finding the people that know what can be done, because they really do have the data. They really do work. They actually do show up for work. And they actually have the data on how to do this thing. But because it keeps being fed from above all the time, there's just all this extra debris and noise that keeps coming down that causes more clutter and more splitting and more something.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to suggest that I could solve the question of bureaucracy today, but I think there's something about what we have. We have the people. I'm going to go off on tangents now, but I always kind of had an objection to Tom Brokaw's book, The Greatest Generation, because I thought, damn it, that's not my generation. How did they get that? But I did start reading some of it recently, and to his credit, he's finding people that are very singular in that generation.
What generation is he referring to?
Well, he's talking about the generation that won World War II.
Okay.
And that generation was formed by the Great Depression. That was part of what they had. And then they had a World War that lasted 5 years. And it's really hard for people of a certain age to understand. You think you have problems with your relationship, have your lover go away for 5 years and see how well you're doing upon that person's return.
Right.
See what the hell that's like for 5 years. And like, you didn't answer my letter. My letter.
Right.
Your letter. What letter? Your letter never came. I was under fire. Whatever it was.
And then you come back shell shocked.
And then you come back with shell shock on top of it. And then back then, the sort of kind of, I don't want to say a macho thing, but back then people just didn't want to talk about it, which to me was what is part of what created the hippie generation. Was kids couldn't get their parents to talk about anything that they thought mattered. Right. What their parents were talking about was like, huh? Wait, what about peace, love, and what's so wrong about peace, love, and understanding, right?
Right.
So, and they couldn't get to that because even the idea of peace was a completely different concept to someone that lived through a world war.
Yeah.
Or lived through a depression. So these kids were like, I don't even understand who these people are. I know they're flesh and blood, but I don't know that. I don't know what the hell they know and why they're this way. But he chose people that lived a very intentional purpose during that very, very difficult, challenging time, where they just went, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what all this is, but I do what I do know. I do know what I do know, and stay through that. And that's, I guess that, I don't know how this relates me to this idea of bureaucracy, but people that do know the facts have got to stay with the facts, even in the face of like all the blunderbussing above about, there's this and there's that. You've got to be really dedicated to what you do know, and realize that there's lots that you don't know. But if you give up what you know in the name of, jostling over here, then there's even more lost.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think most people get involved, particularly if they get involved in something like homeless or any charitable organization. Most of the people get involved aren't doing it cynically. They're not doing it to get that big paycheck. Their initial reason for being involved in something like that is to help. The problem is sometimes when they realize it's just a big clog and you're not going to be able to do any meaningful good, then things get weird. And then you just sort of exist off of this system that's not doing anybody any good. This is his argument about why so many people are working on this and nothing's getting better.
All right, so who's this one?
That's my friend Colion Noir. This is my friend who's a lawyer who went to San Francisco and saw all this. And had a conversation with someone who's actually in government in San Francisco and was explaining what the problem actually is.
And the government, people say it's the government.
No, they say there's no incentive. There's no incentive for them to do a better job, and there's a very compassionate perspective in the city. They're very kind people, and they don't want to take these homeless people and remove them. And that this sort of suicidal empathy that they have for the people in their city is causing this rash of tents everywhere and crime, and you have to leave your fucking car unlocked, otherwise they're going to smash your windows. And it's just, that's what his perspective is. It's that there's no real incentive to do anything different because these people are still getting paid to keep it the way it is. It's not, the amount of money they make is not based on how much good they do. So like if they're incentivized to, like, you get paid more if more people clean up, seek treatment, get on medication, get to a mental health institution. If you can show some sort of progress, it'll affect how much money you get, and vice versa. If you have no progress and nothing gets done and the problem actually gets worse, perhaps you're not doing a good job.
Well, that sort of makes sense, doesn't it? Like,
it does.
You get results.
Yes.
You get encouraged by getting more money. But
yeah.
So does this remind you of anything?
It reminds me of everything. It reminds me of the government itself. What does it remind you of?
Well, I feel like there's something hanging over our heads here that's like this situation, and maybe it's just a continuous situation of like a...
Yo, what's up, Gigi?
More and more people.
Just working on a dragon.
And more people want to have a voice. And there's just more people shouting all at once. And
I don't know, I just made it up.
There's not quite the
This is my dragon. I drew him from scratch, from inside my head.
I guess...
Trying to see what is...
But, the greatest generation...
Trying to have some fun.
A war to maybe save the
yeah, I made up this little symbol, too. I was like,
Right.
I didn't look at anything, so he's like, my original came out of my being, came out of my energy.
Life would be different. Life would have been different, and if that kind of dictatorship kind of world had gone further, that it would have been a different world. It wouldn't have grown the way it is. But now it's grown. There's this freedom. The war was fought. I believe there was a great quote in one of those books, like,
Hope you're having a good day.
there's no such thing as
Or you had a good day.
something like
Hope
that.
you're having a good night, whatever time it is where you are.
I feel like like there's no sort of idea that we can agree, that people can agree on that's the source of, like, a reason for our being.
Well, it's a very uniting thing to be all together against a common enemy that is real, like World War II. Like, there's a real purpose to life. People understand that this is a very important mission. This is something that, unfortunately, it's one of the best ways to unite people, is a threat from the
That's all
outside.
we've come up with.
Well, that's what happened after 9/11. You remember 9/11? Everywhere in LA, people driving around with American flags on their
I'll
car.
never forget 9/11. What it was like to walk down the streets of New York after 9/11. There was nothing like it I've ever experienced in my whole life.
Right. It was bizarre, but it was also very united. Like, people were together.
People looked into each other's eyes. You walked by someone on the street,
Yeah.
and every person on the street looked right in your eyes.
Yeah.
And that lasted for weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people in New York walk with their head down, they look
Right.
they're reading the paper, but people just looking by like, okay, we're in this.
Yeah, together.
Yeah.
And I think some people actually obviously hated the act of what happened, but loved the way people reacted and how people felt with each other. It did feel different. New York City felt friendly. It felt united. It felt like people were proud to be American. We're all together. There's bad people out there. They did this to us, but we're all together.
Well, okay, so what we have here with the situation of, like, just using San Francisco as the idea is like it's just a gentler version of something that we could all say this is something that we have to
Yes.
go to war about.
Yeah. Or it's a task.
Whether it's
Yeah.
any kind of a problem that we have as a group that we all are affected by
Yes.
or care about.
Well, it's too easy to ignore. It's too easy to just say, oh, there's the tents, let's go this way. And the reality is, the health of the community, it's dependent upon the health of the lowest members of the community on the social rung. The lowest members are the people that are sick. And if you don't take care of them, if you don't take care of the people that are mentally ill, that are homeless, that are addicted to drugs, that are on the street, that are desolate, that
An
don't have
upside
friends,
down
don't have
pyramid?
love, don't have structure,
It's
don't have anything that
2111.
they call upon,
Nice.
horrible childhood, the whole deal. If you don't look at that,
Interesting.
then your society's sick. Because this is the foundation of the society is the people. If you got a group of people that are part of your community and you're completely ignoring their plight,
I got to figure out what
that's
to
not
do
good for
on
anybody.
these, so I
it's not good
show
for big
direction.
business. It's not good for the common folk. It's not good for people in the neighborhood. It's not good for anybody. And it's gotten so far because it's so big now. The problem is so enormous. It's almost too big to tackle. It's almost like, okay, you're dealing with LA. You're dealing with 100,000 people living on the street. That's so many fucking people. That's the entire population of Boulder. That's Boulder, Colorado, in tents on the street in LA. That's crazy. It's almost too big. And I talked to Mayor Adler, who was the mayor of Austin at the time when I first moved here, and he had a bunch of plans in place to help the homeless people, and they did an amazing job because it got pretty bad here during
You only
the
do
pandemic.
black and white. Some things I leave black and white
They
because
got
sometimes I feel like
hotels,
color is gonna
they
ruin
got
it, but this one I felt like
programs, they got
I could
people
probably make
jobs,
it
they
have some color on it.
there's
It's like a
company
dragon,
that,
so
we've had what is his name that we had in here, Alan Graham, from Loaves and Fishes, who we went.
It's not like a
his community.
typical dragon though. It's kind of more like
they build houses for these people. They bought an enormous piece of land outside of
celestial
Austin,
dragon or
and
something
he
like that.
sets
It's not
up
like an
work
animal
programs for
dragon.
these people, gives them a sense of purpose. It's an amazing place to be. They're doing art and selling art.
It's working.
Yes, it's working. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't work with everybody, but it works with a lot of them. And these people, they have a sense of community. They all live in a safe area. And, you know, we walked around. I brought my kids. We walked around there. It was like, the whole thing was really nice. It was really wonderful. It was really cool what he's doing.
Well, how did that? Well, so that guy, his plan, his way of working needs to obviously
Scale
out
up.
there. It's
Yeah.
got to get around. So how did
lives
he
there.
make it? Huh?
He lives there. And this is a guy
How
who
did
has
he-
money. He
how did
lives
he-
in the
like,
community
when
with
he
those
did
people.
that, this man must be deputized.
Well, he's a Christian, like a real Christian, like in the greatest sense of the word. Like he's a guy who really believes in reaching out to people and helping people. This is Alan right here. He's just a wonderful guy, like a really beautiful person, and lives with these people. They're his neighbors, and they're constantly bringing people in. And he has all these different programs that people can sign up for to learn arts and crafts and learn how to sell things that you've made, and it's really cool. And you know, I mean, he's doing his part. It's small in relation to like the problem of San Francisco, but you need people like that really dedicate themselves to it.
Yeah, I've heard of Loaves and Fishes. This sounds. I didn't know all of this about.
It's pretty amazing. It's a pretty amazing place that he's got, and he's expanding it. They're building new ones right now. So there's these small houses that these people live in, and they'll have like a community kitchen where they can go and barbecue and grill outside. And there's an arts and crafts center. These people they make cool chess pieces and they sell them. They make paintings and they sell them, jewelry. They're doing all these different things, and it gives them a sense of purpose.
You got to get this guy to San Francisco.
Yes. Well, you need more people like him. That's what it is. It's just he's a very unique guy.
Well, there must be people.
There must
like
be.
him.
But you mean, it's a lot. I mean, he lives with them. I mean, he's in the community. He has one of those little houses in this, giant area.
Did you get some good
And he's with them for encouragement and
kill streaks today?
It's a beautiful thing.
It sounds really amazing.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Okay.
Should we wrap it up, Bill Murray?
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry I kept you so long.
No, it was amazing. It's an honor to meet you. I really enjoyed it very much, and I appreciate talking to you. Thank you, and thanks for the shirt, and thanks for the shorts.
Yeah. Well.
I'm gonna wear those.
Okay. But I will just say that those shorts they're forgiving shorts. So if you've had a big meal,
Good, beautiful.
They still fit you.
I like that.
They're good.
Can people buy these?
Can they?
Go for sale?
Yeah. They sell.
Where do they go?
It's called William Murray Golf. They sell them. They sell them online a lot, and I know they sell them. They sell them in the golf shops, some places, and some stores. That's how
That's
right
it.
there.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's it. William,
Look at that guy.
Look at that. Look at that handsome fucking model.
Yeah, that's a model.
That's a good-looking fella. Let's get loud. All right.
That may be a model too. Yeah, he's definitely a model.
He's beautiful. Well, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
Same here.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan podcast by night, all day. What's up, Ben?
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. Very nice to meet you, man. So, why don't you, instead of me, why don't you explain to people what you do?
So I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Colossal Biosciences. We're the world's first de-extinction and species preservation company.
Yeah, and that is a wild thing. I mean, this is essentially, literally wild. This is essentially real-life Jurassic Park.
Yeah, we get the Jurassic Park occasionally, like, believe it or not, we get that.
Of course. I mean,
I gotta drop my hydrogen tablet in here.
Oh, you do those, the Gary Brecker ones,
yeah,
right?
I'm all
Those are
in.
great.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I love those.
I just didn't want you to think we're going a different direction.
How did you get started even thinking about doing something like this?
So I kind of fell into it. I didn't wake up and say, I saw Jurassic Park, I'm super stoked, I love animals, I want to go work on this. I'm just a weirdly curious person. So there's this guy named George Church. If you don't know George, you should look him up. He's the father of synthetic biology. He's at Harvard University. He's 6'7" with narcolepsy. He's just the best, right? So if you ever had him on, he may fall asleep during the podcast, but he's the absolute best. He's a genius. And I thought my background's in software and just building teams of people that are smarter than me, right? And so I was interested in synthetic biology, this idea that we could engineer life and that would use AI and compute to make it even better. Like, how do we do directed evolution and how that could apply to, like, crops and animals and all kinds of stuff. So I get on the phone with George and I ask him my questions. He answers them in like 6 seconds because he's a genius. And then I start asking about all the other weird stuff that's coming out of his lab. In that process, he's like, you know, I've also been working on mammoths and other things. I was like, wait, what? And I was like, if you had one project, what is it? This mammoth project? And then he went down this whole path about how he'd bring back mammoths, reintroduce them in the Arctic, help the ecosystem, use those technologies for conservation, use those technologies for human healthcare. And I kind of thought it was a fucking joke. I literally thought that, like, the smartest man I've ever met and been on the phone with was a joke. Well, then I stayed up all night just Googling George, and there was this weird mammoth through line. Whether it was in 60 Minutes or, you know, Stephen Colbert, whatever he's in, there was this weird mammoth through line where he was just obsessed with these mammoths, and everyone kind of wanted him to do this. So I called him back the next day. 7 days later, I'm in his lab, and we were off to the races on, okay, we're going to try to go build a company to bring back extinct species.
So how do you decide what to start with?
So we started with the mammoth first, right? Because George, you know, had been working on it for 8 years. We needed his core technologies. We thought that there was a huge application to elephant conservation. There was some ecological modeling that had been done to show that the reintroduction of mammoths back into the wild could actually have a net benefit to the ecosystem. And so that was an easy place to start. After we launched the company, it went crazy viral, and all these other folks from de-extinction research started calling us, like folks from like the Thylacine or Tasmanian tiger, which looks like a mythical creature. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Beth Shapiro with the
Yo, what's up, Presley?
Calling us, and then we just started expanding. You know,
Just
our
hanging out,
design
doing
set.
some art, man.
So how does one do this? It's like, before we get to what you showed me earlier, which is fucking amazing, before that, how does one do this? Like, from what I understand, you have to take the gene of an Indian elephant, which is the closest thing to a mammoth.
Yeah, let me walk through the whole
Please.
process.
Yeah.
So first you have to find ancient DNA, which is pretty shitty on a good day. So the minute we take DNA out of our bodies or out of anything, it starts to degrade at an insanely rapid rate. So we definitely need to find a lot of samples. So we actually have about 109 mammoth samples, ranging from 3,000 years old to 1.2 million years old, which is awesome.
Wow.
But it's also fragmented. It's like a shitty jigsaw puzzle that you don't know what the box is, and someone's stolen part of the puzzle, and then, oh, by the way, people have taken other puzzle pieces and put them in there. So there's all kinds of problems with that. So this is really an AI and compute problem. It's not as much a human problem. So you have to get a lot of samples first, and then you have to start mapping them to their closest living relative. And genotyping allows us to understand that that's Asian elephants, right? So Asian elephants are 99.6% the same as mammoths. They're actually closer related to mammoths than they are to African elephants.
Really?
Yeah, which always blows people's mind. That and the fact that mammoths were alive when we were building the pyramids, or aliens or whoever was building the pyramids. Like literally, like humans were building the pyramids while mammoths existed. And sometimes that blows people's mind because they always think of them as in this like weird, like prehistoric, like 65 million years old dinosaur time.
When did they go extinct?
So the last one went extinct about 4,000 years ago.
Really?
On Wrangel Island. Yeah.
Wow.
So they've been a while. They were around for a long time.
4,000 years
I know
ago.
they weren't. I mean, now they appeared about 2.5 million years ago, as far as we understand. They were mostly a Pleistocene species, but as we moved into the Holocene and kind of the period that we're in right now, they existed. They existed all the way up until they had this like small genetic bottleneck on Wrangel Island.
Wow. And where's Wrangel Island?
It's northeast of Siberia.
Whoa. And they just, was it a small island? They just ran out of resources there? Like, what happened?
Well, there's a couple different theories, right? One of the theories with Wrangel Island is that they actually, there's lots of inbreeding, so there's lots of like genetic bottleneck, which happened because there's not enough different species there.
How large is Wrangel Island?
I'm not quite sure.
Can you give me a photo again, Jamie? Okay.
And so essentially, though, Wrangel Island, and then
Nice to see me doing
another
something
island
else.
called
Yeah, I thought I'd
Island,
switch it up, man.
also between Alaska
Just, you know,
and the United
hang
States.
out, listen to some Joe Rogan,
Also,
and
those are kind of the last two places
blast some
that
art.
we know mammoths existed today.
And they died out 4,000 years ago.
Yeah,
so
and now
it's
some
fairly
actually,
small.
there is actually another working hypothesis that they actually ran out of water. They ran out of access to fresh water on the island.
Oh, wow.
So some combination of genetic bottleneck and that occurred.
Wow. 4,000 years is so recent.
I know, it's crazy recent, right?
Jamie, can you please pull up a photo of an Asian elephant versus a African elephant?
And they're actually mammoths, because there's a, you know, mammoths themselves, yeah. Mammoths themselves are close related to the Asian elephant.
Which is on the left?
Yeah, which is on the left. So they have that dome cranium, they have the small ears, they have a little bit of a hump structure Mammoths, because they had these massive tusks, right? And you've talked to lots of folks in kind of the mammoth world. They actually, move their heads quite slowly. They had to have this entire ridge of extra muscle in order to do that. But one of the things that's awesome also about the Asian elephants is some Asian elephants, some of the ones that are born actually they're not mammoth-like, but they have a lot of fur on them, and they kind of lose it over time.
Wow. So are those the ones that you would find like in Thailand?
Yes, and Thailand, and then parts of different parts of India and the Indian
I
subcontinent.
actually rode one of those once with my family.
Did you
I
go
don't
to
recommend it.
Did you go to one of those places that you like to take care of them?
Yeah. You have to like get a relationship with them. So you feed them sugar cane and you wash them and you play nice with them for like a while.
Yeah.
Like a couple hours. It was like at least an hour. You're just hanging out with them, petting them, and then once they decide you're cool,
then
they let you ride them.
Yeah.
But my whole family rode them, and I was like totally opposed to it. I was like, I'm doing it just because you guys want to do it. I just want to feed them.
Yeah.
I just want to hang out
with them. Yeah.
It just felt weird. My daughter fell off, I think twice. My youngest daughter fell off once at least, and I was like, do we know that this elephant wants us riding?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of a weird thing.
It's a weird thing, right? Yeah.
And then afterwards, you get in the water and you wash them.
Yeah.
And everything, and I just kind of hung out with them. And
I'd be cool.
they're very sweet.
I don't think I want to ride one. I like being, around them.
I think there's a video on my Instagram of it. Yeah, there definitely is, because she was eating a log. I was like, oh, why are you eating a log?
Yeah.
It's just weird. They're so enormous, but they're really like peaceful and
incredibly smart, and they have incredible pack dynamics, right?
Yeah.
So they've even had all these different examples where they also adopt other animals. I don't know if you've seen any of these videos, but
so here it is. So this is a few years ago in Thailand, and this is an Asian elephant just chilling with this elephant. Yeah, 2018. Okay, there it is. It was really cool.
No, it's awesome.
It's just cool to be around them. They're just a fascinating animal. Just the biodiversity of Earth, the fact that thing exists, is enormous.
This enormous thing with this like robotic prehensile arm. Yeah, it's crazy.
As long as you're cool to them, they're cool to you.
Yeah, they sense it, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, we see that in nature with a lot of animals, right? If you sense it and they don't feel like they're being backed into a corner or fearful, then they're not going to be around that. So some of our animals I've been around, and they're starting to get quite large, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point.
Yes.
At some point though, you're still kind of like, they are wild animals, so you have to maintain some level of healthy distance.
Yeah. So let's just get right to it.
Do you want to finish the process?
Yeah, please.
So we have the ancient genome, so you have to collect and assemble.
Right.
And that's, a lot of people just think of us in the lab, like just a bunch of people in the lab, but that's like some Indiana Jones shit. Like, we're literally going into the permafrost and like collecting dead samples from the permafrost, which, you've had, John Reeves on here. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
It smells like death. It literally, like I said, it is death. It's just over time piled up death. And
have you visited John?
Yeah, I visited John.
You went to the boneyard?
Yeah, I went to the boneyard.
What's it like there?
It's crazy. It's exactly what you'd expect. I didn't know John. So I'm on the board of trustees of the Explorers Club. So we take these expeditions. We did an expedition to Alaska to do mammoth retrieval, and then we're also doing some cultural studies with some of the indigenous people groups around mammoths. Like, do you want mammoths back? Is this a good idea, right? Because we try to be pretty inclusive. And they're like, oh, we got to meet the biggest landowner in Alaska, John. And I was like, okay, great. I'm excited. So go meet him. We pull up. He's in a different car, and he's like, and I think he wanted us to follow him. He's like, get in. I was like, okay, and he's big dude.
He's enormous.
Yeah, I'm not that big of a dude, right?
No, especially giant.
Especially after Gary Breck has been working on me. I'm a smaller dude, right? And so, like, I literally get in. I get in the car. There's a bunch of stickers, and there's one that has butterflies on it that says "Give 0 fucks." And I was like, and he's like, just move the gun over. So I move the gun over, and he goes, listen. And this is the first words out of his mouth to me. If I stop short, you hand me that gun. And I was like, I didn't even ask a follow-up question, because, like, what do you do when you get in the car with John? And he says, you hand me that gun. If I stop quick and I say, hand me that gun, you hand me that gun. I was like, that's awesome. And he showed me around
What kind of gun was it?
It was just some type of rifle.
So it was grizzlies.
I assume it was for grizzlies, yeah. Or bears, or, something large.
Yeah.
But then he showed me around the boneyard and showed me his collection, and he was completely, he didn't know us from anybody. He just opened up everything to us, right? And he's like, let me show you all this. Showed us his skull. He actually has a warehouse. I don't know if he ever discloses where it is, but he has a warehouse where he has some of the greatest specimens ever.
Yeah.
So it's cool. You should go. It's cool.
I do want to go. He's an amazing guy.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. And then, you know, being in the mammoth researcher business, we're like, oh, we'd love to, you know, use some of your samples. Can we take them? And he's like, no. And he was very honest. And he told us, and that's like before your podcast with him, we kind of learned that story, right? And so that's what sucks is how like some people can ruin it for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, because he's, you know, outside of Fairbanks, it's not the easiest place to build a, you know, biocontainment level 3 lab.
Right.
But he's like, he's like, you build a lab here, you can use whatever you want. But he's like, the bones stay here. So he's very consistent with his messaging.
Well, you know, the whole deal with the Museum of Natural History, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
And I totally believe it.
well, it's a fact
Yeah.
now. They found these bones in the East River
Yeah.
exactly where they told them to drop it off. They have steppe bison fragments
Yeah,
and
I've seen it.
woolly mammoth fragments, so they know that they're there.
Yeah, and well, I mean, you built a relationship with John. He's just a normal, no bullshit kind of guy.
Yeah.
He's like, you stole this stuff, give it back.
Yeah.
Or he's also like, hey, if you want to come work on it, come on. Like, he's very collaborative.
It's like, what do you guys have? Like, why are you keeping that shit in a basement? Like,
Yeah.
what is that?
I mean, when we do work, you know, outside of the expeditions of collecting ancient DNA, when we do work, we also work with museums, right? And so we go to like the catacombs of the museums, and it's exactly what you think of as like the Vatican archives, right? You go down to like sub-basement 4 of the Smithsonian, and it's just rows and rows and rows of taxidermy animals that you've never seen. It's got like little drawers and boxes, and they're like, oh, this is giant sloth poop. And I was like, I didn't know there was giant sloth poop. They're like, yes, and we think there's DNA in it. I was like, well, this is like, you know, the card catalog of like all like dead species,
Yeah.
but it's not on display for the public. It's just in a basement.
And is it extensively archived? They know where everything is, or is there some stuff down there?
I mean,
that they don't know what it is.
I wouldn't say that they are at least any museum, I think they have a lot more than they know. I don't see it in like massive computer systems because we ask for inventory lists and, you know, like what's the shopping list?
It's been over 100 years they've been doing
Yeah.
this, so people have come and gone.
Oh, they'll pull out drawers that have like Darwin's name on it and stuff like that.
What?
I mean, that's how we did the thylacine. We actually found in a cup about this size, we actually found we call it the miracle pup, where they shot the mother, they took the 3 joeys, the babies, killed the 3 pups, and they put one of them in formaldehyde, and we got a 98% complete genome from the first sample of that pup.
Wow.
But they didn't even know they had it. They also, on the thylacine, which I'm sure we'll talk about more later, they also found a head in a bucket. They didn't even know it was the mom's head. So we could actually look at the genetic relation between the two. And they didn't know they had the head in the bucket. They just had a head in a bucket. They opened it up. It was marked thylacine. They opened it up, and there was a full thylacine skull in there. There's pictures of it online and everything. And we used that to get to a 99.9% complete genome because we also had the ancestry of the pup and mother.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's probably treasure troves in some of these museums that aren't being, you know, fully utilized.
So if you have 98% or you have 99%, what's the process of going from that?
So
here it is.
yeah, there's the head in the bucket. So Andrew Pask, who leads our, in partnership with the University of Melbourne, leads our thylacine work. And that's the head and bucket. I mean, there's soft tissue, there's teeth, there's petrous bones, which we'll talk about.
Do you buy into any of these sightings?
No, I did. So Andrew Pask, for years, he's been working on it for 15 years.
I'm the new Bob Ross, that's right.
He's been working on
Defo.
a shoestring budget, and that's part of the problem with de-extinction is nobody's put real capital into it until now. And he's been working on it for 15 years, and he's had people send him, you know, poop, clippings from, you know, hair, and all this stuff over the years. They just send it to him, and then he loves the thylacine so much he just sequences it, and he's like, no, it's a dog. You sent me more dog shit, thanks. I mean, it's demoralizing. But like when I got into thylacine, you know, we met Andrew, we did a partnership with him. We actually made the largest investment in marsupial research, more than the Australian government. We made the largest investment in research for marsupial development of anyone. So we do this, and then you get into the myth of it, right? So you start reading it, right? I start reading all the books on the thylacine. I get obsessive about projects. And so I'm pretty obsessed about extinction right now. And so got super deep in it. And then I started calling Pascal's like, hey, I've been watching these YouTube videos and I kind of think they're still there. And Pascal's like, no, stop it. Don't go down that rabbit hole. So I don't believe.
But why did he say that?
Well, because he's been testing for the last 15 years all over Tasmania, right? So not just Southern Australia, but all over Tasmania.
So samples, poop,
Samples,
stuff like
just
that.
everything, using camera traps. And nobody's... I think that they officially say that the thylacine went extinct in 1936.
Mm-hmm.
But probably into the late 40s and early 50s, they still existed. But, I mean, I think it's very unlikely that one still exists. It'd make our lives a lot easier.
Forrest really believes it.
He does. He thinks they're in Papua New Guinea.
And because of sightings.
Yeah, he said he thinks in the western part of Papua New Guinea in the mountains.
And also incredibly remote.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
In the separation of that topography separates the Papua New Guinea singing dogs, which could be competitive for them for predator-prey, from where the thylacine sightings were.
What's a singing dog?
It's just another large canid that has a unique howl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it still exists. Oh, I'm sure Jamie can find a video.
I want to hear that. I've never heard of this.
Yeah.
Singing dog.
Yeah.
Wow.
Papua New Guinea singing dogs.
By the way, folks, we're teasing you because this is not just theoretical.
Yeah, so
this is what's going to get crazy.
Yeah, it's going to get weird.
This podcast is going to blow your fucking mind. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Opera singers.
These rare animals have a knack for holding a tune, even to an exact key.
Opera singers love these.
Oh, they're so cute.
Yeah.
They're so cute. Do people keep them as pets? That looks like a dog.
Yeah, it looks like a dog.
That looks like a dog.
They're wild dogs in Papua New Guinea, but I'm sure people have domesticated them.
Wow. Pretty fucking cool dogs. And hanging out with a fox.
So once you have enough of that DNA, right, from all these different samples, and you can assemble it, you then have to build comparative genomic models to its closest living relatives. In the case of the mammoth, the Asian elephant. But I'm from software, so I just assume there's like the Google cloud of DNA. Like we backed all, like we've all done 23andMe before it went bankrupt, right? So we should assume that the government or someone backed up and had kind of like the 23andMe of all species.
Right.
That doesn't exist.
Wow.
Which is insane. So there's no backup. There's no like Noah's Ark bio vault for life, like kind of like the seed vaults. That doesn't exist. And so we're actually petitioning the U.S. government to help put a massive project together to help biobank it. It's starting with just American megafauna keystone species. So that doesn't exist at all. And so then Colossal had to go out and go build reference genomes for all the species, like the closest living relatives for all the species that we're working on.
So this is the question. If you have, say, let's go to woolly mammoth.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have woolly mammoth and you have 99%, how do you bridge that gap? How do you create?
That's synthetic biology. So you never have to get to 100%, right? You need to get to probably
synthetic biology.
Synthetic biology. That's where you are using all of these different genetic tools. Probably heard of CRISPR, all these other things. Genetics, which is it knockout. It breaks the DNA. It's not always the best tool. We can now actually make individual edits to, when you think of the DNA double helix, right, in those rungs of the ladder, those individuals are called nucleotides. We can change the letters. Like, that's how precise we can be. We can say at spot 4,000,008, I need to change that letter. And so you change that letter. And then other times you actually synthesize big blocks of DNA. So when you notice that in the mammoth and in the Asian elephant, there's a difference, and if it's in these certain like protein coding regions, in all these different regions of the genome that drive phenotypes or physical like attributes, like curved tusk, dome cranium, small ears, the subcutaneous fat layer, and then hair and coat color, you can actually then engineer that into the Asian elephant, right? Because you're only really looking at that 0.4% difference, right? It's still a lot of numbers. But you're only looking at that, and so the better you can be at software, and the better you can be using AI and computer models, the less edits you have to make, right? Because you're really just trying to target those core phenotypes.
Right. Are there specific genes that regulate size? Because they're larger.
So mammoths are about the same size. They're a little bit bigger than Asian elephants, a little bit smaller than African elephants. elephants.
Oh.
So there were 11, everyone argues over the definition of speciation because it's a stupid concept that humans made, not nature made. And so there were 11 different types of mammoths out there that evolved in different ways, and some of them were larger. But the woolly mammoth, the one that we were pursuing, that has that woolly phenotype, it was about the size of an Asian elephant.
And
But to your question on size, it's actually a cluster of genes. We're finding more and more about how different genes also map across all species as well.
And so there's specific characteristics that these animals have, one of them being the big furry coats, that you guys, what did you do with mice?
We made woolly mice.
See if you can find that.
The only like unintended consequences was they were cute as fuck. Like people lost their minds, right? Like I was on the phone recently with a moderately aggressive journalist. And it was going quite poorly, as some calls go.
Moderately aggressive? They were being aggressive in what way? Like,
some
why
people,
are you doing this?
Some people, yeah, everyone likes
Look how
it.
cute!
Yeah. So,
my daughter actually found this online and wants one.
Yeah, so we get that a lot from
She wants
from
a woolly
kids.
mouse.
So every week, I don't have my laptop actually.
Look how cute!
But every week.
Oh my God, they're adorable.
So these woolly mice aren't just adorable. We basically said, look, what are the core genes that drive the hair phenotype or physical attribute of a mammoth, from an Asian elephant to a mammoth. And then because we want to do this in the most ethical ways possible, there's about 200 million years of genetic divergence between mice and elephants. We didn't just want to ram mammoth DNA in there and see what happens. So we looked for the mouse equivalent, right? So we looked for, like, all of us have similar genes, so we can try to look for those genes and then edit those genes with the data we got from the mammoth, so that we're then not just putting random genes in there that could either hurt the animal or kill them, right? Or they may not even be compatible with life, right? So we try to be really, really thoughtful about it. And the woolly mice it went insane. There's people that are like making t-shirts, a meme coin. And so we made 36 mice. They're all healthy. There's 36 mice that we made. And what was crazy about it is we're excited about it because it shows that the end-to-end process of taking data from an ancient DNA, comparing it to a living animal, making those changes, doing it with 100% efficiency. And that's really important and really hard. So we did it with 100% efficiency. Yeah, that's the
difference.
Well, so the
one of them, if it was in a trap, you'd be so sad.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
the little guy on the left, if he was in a trap, I'd be like, oh, look at we cute. Isn't that funny? Just a little bit of fur.
Yeah.
Makes you love them.
And that's the color that we think most mammoths were.
Really? They were like a blonde.
They were like a golden brown color, right? Because when we pull them out of the permafrost, they've been sitting in mud for quite some time. But if you see very fresh mammoths, like from Siberia and whatnot, like in Yakuts and other places in northern Siberia, that they actually have pretty well preserved mammoths. They actually have kind of a dirty blonde meets gold meets brown fur.
Wow.
And so we did that, and now there's people that are making T-shirts that aren't us, and pillows that are like legalized woolly mice. I'm like, they're not illegal. And then there's a meme account for the guy that did the CRISPR babies, that went in trouble for making edited babies in China. Yeah. A meme account.
Oh wow, so that's mammoth fur.
Yeah,
wow.
A meme account though actually said on X that these are a bioweapon, and that Colossal's made a bioweapon. So the weirdness of the woolly mouse went crazy viral. What we were trying to show is that we used our multiplex editing tools, meaning that we edited all of those genes at the same time. Most people edit one gene, let that mouse live. From the second lineage, they'll do one more gene, let that mouse live, and then they'll stack those edits over multiple generations. We've developed a system so that we can deliver all of those edits at one time, all over the genome, get exactly what we want, and then we have this what's called monoclonal screening, where we're screening the cells at the end, sequencing all the cells, which is expensive and sounds like overkill, but then we know that none of them have unintended consequences or off-target effects in the genome, so that we know the mice that we then do cloning with, we know that they'll be healthy. And so we try to spend a lot of time on that, because we're certified by American Humane Society. It's the oldest humane organization in the world. And if you've seen the film, that's like no animals were harmed in the making of this film. That's those guys. Right. So we've ended up. So we really care about kind of not just the de-extinction efforts, the genome engineering efforts, but ensuring that the animals are healthy when they come out. And so the woolly mouse was a really interesting proof of concept. It shows that the edits that we are working on are working right, and we're getting exactly what we predicted.
Is there any plans to sell those?
No, everyone keeps asking us that. But you know what? Museums actually are now calling us saying, and zoos are calling us saying, can we display the woolly mice? They're like, it'll drive so much value. It'll teach people about, genetics and whatnot. So, it's not our business model to sell our animals or to sell, woolly mice, but it's kind of gone crazy.
Is it dangerous though to leave these mice in the hands of someone even at a zoo who decides I want more of these?
Yeah, if we ever put them, I think more likely we put them in a museum that needs to be free, like the Smithsonian or something like that, from an education perspective, versus something that's more attraction based. I think we do it more in the case of a museum.
Do you plan on keeping this batch alive?
Yeah, they're going to live out their normal lives, and
but you're not going to make new ones.
We may make new ones.
What if
with
they breed?
These won't. They're all separated. They're all separated by sex. So we're not gonna have like a Jurassic Park moment where they change. They're all separated by sex. But if Jamie finds a picture of their habitats, they actually live a couple years, but they don't live like traditional lab mice that live in like a small little cage and all on top of each other. They actually live in pretty sweet digs that we made for them. They're all we spared no expense.
Cool little house.
Yeah, and they're big, and we put fun stuff in them to play with, like this. And what's been crazy is we only named 2 of them, and we named them Chip and Dale because we people were asking what the names were, and I was like, Chip is the only thing that I could think of at the moment. And now even on X, people are like, we need pictures of Chip. Where is Chip? We've only seen pictures of Dale, and there's like these incredible internet sleuths that are like, that's not Chip, that's Dale. We need a picture of Chip.
You can't get involved.
Yeah, so we've just
don't get involved with those people.
We've not leaned in. Yeah.
You cannot.
We're excited. They're excited, but we just can't. Yeah, we're busy.
So this is a new thing. The woolly mouse is a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any talk about doing other kind of new things?
So it's more of a proof of technology. I think that the mouse model, because it's a 20-day gestation versus 22 months in elephants, it's a great way to test phenotypes. Because with a mammoth, you have 3 ways to test if you got the edits right. 1, you can do molecular tests. You can do DNA sequencing to see if it worked. 2, I guess there's 4. 2, you could grow a mammoth and see if it looks like it, but that's a lot of work in 22 months, like a lot of gestational time, a lot of money. I think there's a lot of risk in that. The third, and this is a little weird, we created what's called induced pluripotent stem cells. So we created cells that you can then turn into any type of tissue. So we actually do have mammoth hair follicles growing in a lab. So we have hair growing in petri dishes in the lab, which is pretty cool. And if you come see the lab, you'll get the whole Willy Wonka tour of it, which is pretty cool. And then the fourth way is mice, right? Because it's like if we can then engineer them into mice, we can see immediately within 20 days if the edits were working, if there were any unintended consequences that would be detrimental to the animal.
Wow.
So we'll probably make more iterations of the woolly mice. The thylacines' closest living relative is the fat-tailed dunart, which is a mouse-sized marsupial, and it actually gestates in 13 and a half days versus 20 days. So there's no reason to do it in mice when you can do it immediately in the model species.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you make the decision to do what you ultimately did, what you showed me before the show?
We're working on the mammoth, the Tasmanian tiger, and the dodo for different reasons. We work with a lot of different private landowners, governments, and indigenous people groups. And a project that we announced through our Colossal Foundation about 2.5 years ago is doing a population genomics map. We talked about biobanking a little bit. So we want to understand from the bison that are still here in America, what's genetic diversity, what's been lost, what's the number of inbreeding. So we go through this whole process to try to understand, and then we were giving a report back to MHA Nation. Chairman Fox, it's one of the largest indigenous people groups in the United States, one of the largest tribes based in North Dakota. So we're giving them a report out on this. We went to their nation, wanted to share this, and then we're curious. So we said, what other projects would you work on if we could do that's helpful outside of helping bison? And they said that we needed help with wolf conservation. They brought up that. They said that we needed help with more bison conservation. They said if we do stuff around eagles and fish, and so we kind of got that feedback. And when Chairman Fox was walking me through their cultural heritage museum, he actually stopped on this incredible picture of a white wolf, and he said, that's the great wolf. And he talked about the ancestral knowledge that was passed down and that's been lost, and how many people believed that it could have even been a dire wolf. And I was like, from Game of Thrones, that's cool. I love the show. That's interesting. So we did that. We talked about that. And then, 3 months later, I was in North Carolina, and understanding that for a completely different meeting around financing. And in that meeting, the Red Wolf program came up. I don't know if you know anything about the Red Wolf, but it's kind of a disaster.
Yeah.
It's the only endemic wolf to America. That's only endemic to America. It's a red wolf. It's beautiful, and there's like 15 left in the wild. With massive loss of genetic diversity, massive bottleneck. And I was like, wait, we're supposed to be this country of innovation. We can't save our own. When you think of like the American West, right? You think of wolves. You think of like eagles soaring. You think of like trout, bears catching trout. You think of bison. The thought that we could lose one of these amazing icons, we're like, we have to do something about this. We have to figure something out. And so we put that kind of on the list. And then in a weird series of events, we've had all of these kids over the last 3 years, and teachers and parents sending us pictures of woolly mammoths or dodos or thylacines. Like, we get like boxes of this every single week, which is pretty cool. So we're gonna make a colossal kids corner at our new labs. And in that, we've had some Hollywood talent, like Tom Brady, others that have invested in the business. They're just excited about it. Most of them learned about it through their kids, kind of like with the woolly mouse with you. And so everyone's excited about it. And then we talked again to MHA Nation. They brought up the direwolf again. And so we thought maybe there was an opportunity to bring back an American species, because direwolves were only found in the U.S., a little in North America, but predominantly in the United States, coastal United States. And we thought if we could do something that could bring back the direwolf, also help wolf conservation, and bring people from like sci-fi, fantasy, and kids more into science and into the conversation around conservation, we thought it was a cool idea, but we had no idea if we could pull it off.
Is there dead dire wolves that were trapped in permafrost, or is
No, most of the dire wolf skulls out there, there's thousands of them in La Brea tar pits. So if you go there, they have this beautiful wall, but because of heat and acidification, there isn't anything that's protected. Like, there's nothing you can get from that. But about 6 years ago, a group, including Beth Shapiro, our chief science officer, sequenced a tooth that was found in a cave, just a single tooth, right? And in that tooth, they actually found they actually got 0.15x or coverage of the genome, so they got about 15% of the genome. But that's not really enough. You need to get up to about 10x, meaning that you can read the entire genome about 10 different times, so that even if there are gaps, you understand enough of the core kind of coding regions that you could bring back that animal.
Is this done by AI?
It's done by AI and software, yeah. So we built, part of our business model is building technologies to solve these really complicated problems. They're much harder to solve than just solving them for existing species. Open sourcing that for conservation for free, but then also taking those technologies that we can modify.
Come on, listening to it's Joe Rogan.
So our first
Joe Rogan and
we actually spun it out of the business.
So you have
Joe Rogan and Ben Lom.
1.5.
Yeah, 0.5, so 15% of the genome.
Okay.
So I went to Beth, who was running an advisor at the time, and said, could you resample the tooth? And she's like, it's like, half an inch long. She's like, it's destructive sampling, like it's going to ruin it. I was like, well, could we scour the other museums and see if it's even possible? So we lucked out, and that tooth's 13,000 years old. The skull itself is 73,000 years old, not exactly sure, but it was found in a riverbed. And it wasn't found in a riverbed at the mouth of a cave. So it wasn't found like in the permafrost. It also wasn't found in like heat and acidification. So there's a bone in all of us called the petrous bone, which is insanely dense, and it doesn't change a lot from after you're born. It's a great DNA storage, better than teeth, better than anything. It's like in the inner ear kind of head area. And so we got permission from the museum to very carefully drill into the underside of the skull and remove the petrous bone to see if we could get DNA. And we got really lucky. Between resampling the first and the skull, we ended up getting about 13 to 14x coverage. So that's more than we needed to potentially bring back the direwolves.
And then what'd you do?
Well, and then we got a knock on the door, and it's so we took that DNA.
Can I ask you before we even started with this?
Yeah.
The aggressive reporters, is it you're playing God? How do you have the right to do this?
So it's been a journey. Okay, so the journey that we've had is when we started the business, we didn't have any scientists. Like, we just didn't, right? They're like, this is tech bros wanting to see cool animals, and they've only got $16 million in funding, and they don't have any scientists. Ha ha. So that was phase one.
Right.
And then we're like, oh well, as an entrepreneur, my job is to hire much smarter people than me.
You smoke cigars?
I do not. Gary's got me on quite a kick. So
Health kick?
yeah. So yeah, I mean,
Cigars aren't bad for you.
well, I'm not saying they're bad for you. I'm just saying that
Allegedly.
Yeah.
I don't care. This is the last of the things that I partake in that are probably bad for you.
Yeah, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Everyone's got their vices.
I like a little cigar. My question, if I was going to grill you, if I was a reporter, it'd be like, what right do you have to invade the natural process of nature and to inject your curiosity and your ability to create new life?
I think that we've become the apex predator on this planet, and we inject our curiosity and choices every day that we overfish the ocean, we overhunt something. In the case of the thylacine, the Australian government put a bounty on its head and killed it off, right? And every time we cut down the rainforest, every time we drink hydrogenated water, we are, playing God on some level, right? Humans are very good at changing the natural flow of things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the good news is that there's been a lot of work around ecology and understanding what the impacts to rewilding can be. And so it's been really, really helpful for us to understand, one of the most successful rewilding programs of all time was reintroducing of 14 or 15 wolves back into Yellowstone.
Right.
And looking at how the ecology of the system completely changed. Like, it changed the shape of rivers, because the elk population were just, they're getting fat, they were getting lazy, they weren't migrating. The sick and the old and the weak weren't getting killed off.
Right.
They were spreading disease. They were eating all of the willows and everything along the banks. So therefore the beavers went away. Beavers are like the most super, climate impact animals that probably exist, because they make wetlands. They make they cause the rivers and ponds to get deeper, so it allows different types of fish and different types of animals. So you have this thing called trophic downgrading. You have this trophic cascading effect when you reintroduce these species.
That documentary is fascinating.
It's so fascinating.
How wolves change rivers.
Yeah.
I know people that lived in Montana before the wolf reintroduction, and a lot of people don't like that the wolves are there, but most of them are elk hunters that were used to something that's just outrageously overpopulated. That's the reality of it.
Yeah.
But they were telling me that they had so many elk that were living, they had such a large population versus the actual resources that were available, that they had all these crazy hunts that were available over the counter. Like, you can hunt cows in the snow. So in the middle of the winter, where they can't move good, you just pick them off in the snow, because they were just trying to cull the population. They were trying to diminish them.
And that's not good for the elk population.
No, it's not.
Not only good for the ecosystem, it's not good for the elk population itself.
Right. I have a good friend who lives in Colorado. He has a ranch in Colorado, and we were at his place approximately 2 weeks after they reintroduced wolves. So they actually reintroduced wolves on his property.
Oh yeah.
And he didn't know it was going to happen before it happened, and all the people around there are ranchers.
Yeah.
So already these 5 wolves that they've reintroduced, he said, killed over a dozen cows and calves. So the problem is they've killed elk as well. In fact, I took a photo of an elk leg that we found on the ground that the wolves had killed. I'm not a big fan of people getting to vote on whether or not you should do something with wildlife. I'm a big fan on having real wildlife biologists assess situations. And in the case of Colorado obviously borders Wyoming, and Wyoming has wolves. Yep. Wolves were making their way into Colorado already, and they are protected. The problem with reintroducing them is you're essentially asking a wolf that doesn't know the territory to start killing things in that territory.
Yeah, or to stop at an imaginary border. It doesn't exist.
There's no borders. They go hundreds and hundreds of miles.
Exactly.
But the idea that you're doing this, and you're doing this where there's ranches, is crazy. And in Colorado, particularly stupid, because the first batch were literally animals that they had captured because they were killing wildlife.
Yeah.
So they moved him from Oregon to Colorado, where they started killing wildlife. Yeah, but they're killing. Excuse me, I'm saying wildlife. What I really meant to say was animals, agriculture. They're killing domesticated cows. They're killing these calves, and you know they're having a real fucking problem with that.
And it is something that needs to be continually monitored. That shouldn't just be on some random vote of how you feel about it, right? Like,
We just can't let people vote on that.
You know,
too many people live in these high population areas.
I couldn't agree more, right? So, like, we as humanity, like, if you look at the third leading cause of death of elephants, it's human-elephant conflict, right? Like, we have to figure these things out.
Yes.
We don't want degraded ecosystems. We don't want to lose species, but you have to do this in a very thoughtful and measured way, right?
Yeah.
Like with Yellowstone, they're like, this is a big enough ecological preserve. We're tagging the animals.
Yeah.
We're going to walk and measure it. I don't think that it's safe or smart to put any, not just predators, but also like large herbivores in these heavy population dense areas. We have to understand that some of these areas not are lost, but have already been changed for a different reason.
Yes, and they've achieved homeostasis. They've achieved the balance, right? Which is the big issue with Colorado right now. And it's going to be the big issue whenever you reintroduce an animal that used to be there and is no longer there. And I think in the case of Montana, I think you're right. And I think that there is an argument that maybe the wolves being there is better. Obviously not if you're a rancher.
The Colorado stuff is completely going to destroy all of the stats. So pre-Colorado, right? So I'm talking about reintroduction into Montana, reintroduction into parts of Canada, reintroduction into Yellowstone, the red wolf, which is a very small population in North Carolina. There's been less than 5 confirmed fatalities in all of North America in the last 100 years.
You mean humans?
Humans.
Right, and are most of them in Alaska?
Most of them are in Alaska or in Canada, and then it's before Colorado. So not saying with I don't know if the data has. I don't think it has the latest from Colorado, but it represents 0.02% of deaths associated with wolves and cattle and livestock, right? And all livestock, not just cattle. And so the problem is when you go out there and you have a maintained balance that people can understand, and governments actually give subsidies to the ranchers when they get killed by wolves. So that I think that is a good program because you have to be fair to the people that are actually ranching. But the problem is when you're not as thoughtful with the rewilding program and you're not as measured as like what they did in Yellowstone, and they start encroaching in these areas, then the stats are going to go crazy. And when the stats goes crazy, then you're going to start looking to the animals that are the problem. But it's not the animals that are the problem. It was the decision that we gave that power to the masses that were really not informed to make that decision.
Exactly. The problem is people just have these ideas like wolves are beautiful, they're amazing. We all love wolves. It's an incredible animal. I'm so happy it exists. Don't put it near where there's a ranch.
Exactly.
You can't vote on that if you live in Denver. That's crazy.
Yeah, if it doesn't affect your livelihood, if it doesn't affect the risk to your animals or your family, you have to be mindful of that.
There's also, they're getting a very skewed perspective because the governor's really interested in it and his husband is really interested in it. His husband apparently is the one who really wanted it to happen. And, you have a mandate, so you have to get wolves out by a certain time. And when you're doing it, the only wolves available are wolves that kill livestock, so you're like, fuck it.
Yeah, it's just not. You have a lot of so the project that we'll probably eventually talk about is we brought in a lot of the teams, so many people that have been on your show that know how to do the rewilding the right way over time.
Okay, so this is what we'll just get to it. You made a fucking dire wolf.
I didn't. Our team, our incredible team, made 3 dire wolves so far.
Let's see the photos. Jamie, bust out some photos. Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourself, because this is truly fucking crazy.
Yeah.
That's the pup.
Yeah, so this is, so that's actually Romulus. So we have 2 boys, Romulus and Remus, founders of Rome. And then we have Khaleesi, who's the new girl. So this is Romulus and Remus. So funny story about this. So Peter Jackson from Lord of the Rings,
Jamie.
Peter Jackson from Lord of the Rings was actually one of our investors, and he has this huge museum in Wellington that he's building for all these movie props. And he's like, I was sitting in Peter's house with he and his partner Fran, and I was like, I showed him the video of them howling. He started tearing up. He goes, "This is the first time I've heard a direwolf, or anyone's heard a direwolf in 10,000 years." He physically, emotionally got chills and started crying. And then he's like, "Well, I do have the throne. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, I bought the throne last week at auction, at a private auction for like Sotheby's or someone, right? And so he did, and it just happened to be where the wolves were doing their vet checkup. Like, talk about cosmic coincidence. Incredible, right? And so, you know, what you don't see in this photo is you don't see the fact that we have American Humane Society there. We had 3 veterinary people. We had 6 people from our animal care
When
team.
you say checkup, you don't vaccinate these little guys, do you?
They do get, because of viruses from that they can get from the soil. At 8 weeks, they do get basic virus. They do get basic vaccines.
Oh, were you concerned about that? I mean, you have this animal that you're just...
Yeah, so these are staying on, you know, like these are not going back into the wild, right?
Right, not yet.
Right now, they're on a 2,000-acre secure, expansive ecological preserve with 24/7 care. We have an animal hospital that we built.
Wow.
People always like, you guys raise so much money. And I was like, well, because we didn't just spend it on the labs. You have to spend it on the animal care, the facilities, and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Let's see the photo of the actual grown ones, because they're fucking nuts.
Yeah, so this is Romus and Remus playing in the snow on the preserve when they are 3 months old.
So 3 months, how big are they?
3 months, they were north of 45 pounds.
Wow.
So,
Look at that face. God, they're so beautiful.
they just get like, as they've aged, they've just got more and more beautiful.
So let's go to the adults, because the adults have crazy characteristics that you were saying that you didn't even know that
We didn't know, right? And so we ended up getting a.
Is this a full-grown one?
No, they're still 5 months old, so they're 80 pounds at 5 months. So wolves typically grow 12 to 14 months, so they're not full grown yet.
Wow. And how big is it already?
80 pounds, about 5.5 feet.
In the mane.
Yeah, and so a couple things about the wolves, Jamie, if you go back, yeah. So we didn't know this, right? We knew that they were a Pleistocene wolf. We knew that they existed and went extinct about 12,000 years ago, when a lot of megafauna went extinct, like during kind of that younger dryas kind of cooling period. They went extinct as well, right? And we knew, because all we have is, we don't have frozen dire wolves or frozen samples. We literally just know from skeletal remains that they were 20 to 25% larger. They were stockier. They probably weren't as fast based on kind of their body weight as a normal wolf would be. But we knew that they had thicker skulls, larger cranium, and whatnot. And we assumed that and we did find this out in the genome, which is pretty cool, that they were white. Because there's like this misconception for a while that they were red, because some scientists wanted to make a paper and assume that they were red, so they get their paper.
Doesn't it make sense from natural selection?
Yeah.
They're an Arctic hunting animal.
Yeah, and they have this beautiful, we didn't know this, they have this beautiful like mane-like quality to them. And when they're babies, you saw a couple of pictures, their fur almost feels like polar bears. It's crazy.
Wow.
Is
it like polar bears and it's hollow, or is it not?
Yeah, it's not. It's like typical wolves, but it's incredibly thick. It grows in kind of these clumps. But then as they've grown in, they've started to get this kind of like mane to them, which is incredible.
The females as well?
Well, the female, she's only 6 weeks old, so it's too soon to tell. So if you keep going through a couple other photos,
wow.
Yeah, I mean they're just beautiful, and it's funny. Someone actually said on our team was like, they almost look like Shetland pony wolves at some point, right?
Right. They're so stocky.
They're stocky. They're thicker. They are. I mean, they're absolutely beautiful. So this is Khaleesi. So who looks like a baby, and we nailed it. We named her.
Can we hear it? Let me hear it.
We named Khaleesi for George R. R. Martin, obviously.
Obviously.
Who's an investor in Colossal.
Oh, wow. Aww. Nature's cute little murderers.
Well, everything in nature murders something, right?
Yeah.
Like we were.
Well, cows murder grass.
Yeah. And people are now saying you can hear grass and other plants like scream.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they scream.
yeah. So I guess we all are bad. So.
Life eats life. This
Yeah.
is. I mean, that's the reason why plants have chemicals to dissuade us from eating them. What are they eating there?
So they love to chew on horns in this state. So we have different phases of. We built a 145-page animal guide. These are actually different horns from different elk and other species that we're putting out there.
And they chew on
Or
it.
they chew- they just love
like
it.
a dog does.
Like a dog does, right?
So are you letting these animals kill things, or are you feeding them?
So we're feeding them still. So they eat a combination of bison meat, horse meat, and
Do you
some.
plan on letting them kill things?
So we're
eventually?
just about to introduce carcasses to them. So giving them part of a carcass, letting them feed, building in that dynamic between the two brothers for now, and then and they are starting to exhibit some hunting behavior.
Are you going to let them hunt?
I mean, they are on a seemingly wild 2,000-acre preserve with just them, so they do have the ability to hunt on that preserve, but they're not doing it yet. They're starting to exhibit the original, the first inklings that will trend toward that. But we want them to live. We want them, and we're going to probably make 2 or 3 more. We want a solid little social pack that we can monitor, that can live a seemingly wild life, that we can understand more about them.
Wow.
It's cool. But the other thing that's equally cool to it, going back to the Red Wolf story, can you...
Which is crazy to me that you have reignited these 10,000-year-old hunting genes.
Yeah.
That they're starting to
including size. So we understand more about, like, we looked at what genes made really a direwolf, like what was separated. And the beautiful thing for us is that we had a 13,000-year-old tooth and a 73,000-year-old skull, so we could actually understand the genetic distance. With that much genetic distance between them, we could actually understand what truly was fixed and conserved in the direwolf genome, and what wasn't just population genomes, right? If you and I are 50,000 years apart, there's a lot of different mutations in that time period. But if we can then really say, okay, what made Ben and what made Joe? Oh, here's the overlaps. It allows us to really understand that. Which is awesome.
And it's just fascinating that the behavior characteristics are kind of baked into
They're
those
baked in,
genes,
yeah.
And they just were dormant for 10,000 years, and now these things are waking up.
And so I was in, because I bottle fed Romulus, and Romulus was partly raised with me. I could go out to the preserve. I'd check on him quite frequently. It's in the northern United States, where we don't say where it is, but mainly because we're for not just the animal's health, but for human health. Ever since we launched the woolly mouse, we've had very excited people just show up at our labs are not open to the public, and we've had lots of people just show up wanting to see the mice, and so. Showing people too much of the preserve, we're always very, very nervous about. We scrub all the videos and whatnot to ensure that no one can pick it out, because we assume people will be moderately excited.
Oh yeah. Oh, the internet sleuths will try to find you.
Yeah. So we've done. I'm not trying to challenge them, but we've done everything we can to protect it.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, you have to. Some dude from Saudi Arabia wants a wolf.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody wants a dire wolf.
We get a lot of. We already get a lot of weird calls. But
I bet you do.
The other thing, though,
someone with deep pockets.
Oh, we
Make me a dire wolf, my friend. I have everything in my collection.
We get a lot of weird calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, from people that are like.
There's people that have private zoos.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, enormous.
In India. Yeah. Yeah. They have that family has like the largest private zoo and preserve.
Just so wild.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. Well, Texas's history with animals, right?
Yeah.
There's more tigers in captivity in private collections in Texas
than in the wild.
Than in the wild of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I was in the so we of the 2,000 acres, we have a subsection of it that's about 6.5 acres, where we have an animal hospital, a storm rescue shelter. We have a couple of natural dens that we've built for them, as well as an animal husbandry area, so that way when we want to take photos of them or videos of them or do blood tests, they're in a seemingly more contained area. And it's funny, 2 weeks ago, I was up there, and I was actually sitting on those logs, one of those pictures, and Remus came, Romulus, who I spent the most amount of time with. Remus came pretty close, and I was able to touch him again, but I thought at that moment, and he kind of skiddished away. I was like, that's the last time I'm touching Remus. Like, what am I doing? And I mean, don't get me wrong, I had our animal. I have animal care teams there and everything, and they have been there's some level of habituation between the care team. They really know and love the care team, but they're still wild animals, right? And so
they probably hunted humans.
We don't know, right? But the rise of, kind of going back to their extinction, the rise of the change in kind of this younger Dryas period, and the massive, some of the stuff that there's like several different prevailing theories, one of which is human predation, right? That like the rise of humans led to the extinction of the megafauna. That's kind of, I think the answer is probably a combination. Could have there been an astrological event There's starting to be more and more data around that.
I'm sure you've seen Randall Carlson talk about
I've
this.
seen Randall Carlson talk about it, Graham Hancock talk about it, and they just got the shit beat out of them.
Yeah, but not anymore.
Yeah,
you know,
now it's
the
starting
driest impact theory is well respected now.
It
happened.
Yeah, and it definitely also happened in kind of a regional sense, right? Because you see different, which also tracks to the theory, right? So not only do you have these different layers that you can prove from a sedimentation perspective, but there was also a massive glacial lake and some of the glaciers up there that got rapidly liquefied, that then dumped in the ocean, that also changed ocean patterns. So you went from a period, in that kind of transition from Pleistocene to Holocene, there was this period of insanely accelerated cooling.
Do you know how Randall came up with that idea before it was brought to? Like, his idea is that it was an instantaneous melting of these caps, there's some sort of immense cosmic event, and millions of trillions of gallons of water at an insane rate ran through the land and just carved deep gouges into the earth. He was on acid. He was on acid, and this idea came to him. He was looking out over a ridge. He was looking at this enormous gorge, and he realized the gorge was formed by water rushing at an insane rate of speed. And then he started noticing that there's these huge boulders that are just out in the middle of nowhere that were just moved by this immense amount of water. And then the way the ground, the features of the ground looks like the features that you see on sandy beaches when the tide rolls in and out. And it's like, this is great, and it all tracks. It tracks all over the world.
It's like those. It reminds me of those stories where they show people like the side of the Sphinx, and they're like, "Oh man, that's a lot of water erosion," and then they like flip the photo, and then you see the head of the Sphinx. Like, that's not water erosion.
It's Dr. Robert Schoch from Boston University. I've interviewed him. He was the first guy to propose this. He's like, this is thousands of years of rainfall, and we know that the last time there was rainfall like that in the Nile Valley was 9,000 years ago. So the whole thing is really screwy in terms of like, what is the timeline that this stuff was actually built, and are we just assuming because we've decided that it's 2,500 BC that that's it forever, and no one wants to let that go?
Well, that I'm not a scientist, but and I don't come from academia. I'm just an entrepreneur that knows how to build teams of smarter people than me, and I find cool shit interesting, and I try to work on it, right? And what's crazy to me is the academic system, once again, non-academic, I'm sure I'll get crucified for this, but I don't read the comments.
Don't read the comments.
I don't read the comments. I don't, trust me, I don't read the comments.
Good for you.
I sleep quite well.
Nice.
But the academic, so we have 95 of the top scientific advisors in the world, Nobel laureates and whatnot. We fund 17 academic universities, right, all over the world. We fund 40 postdocs, right, all over the world, right, and they're doing this. So we're very integrated with different ideas from academia and these scholars. And our top people that were at Colossal came from academia. So I think we try to be very academically friendly, but they live in this world, this super kind of like fortune and glory world where it's like, it's a popularity contest. If someone has a paper, because their entire motivation is publish or perish. So one of the other things that people bitch about is they're like, you guys don't write scientific papers for every single thing you do. It's like, we're not an academic university. We're not allowed. I don't have to write a paper on anything ever. We do a couple here and there because we want to share our knowledge with the community, right? But we get this feedback of like, if we wrote a scientific paper for every single thing that we did that went through peer review, like, we would have 3,000 scientific papers and no mammoths ever, right? Because we'd just be sitting around writing fucking papers all day long.
It's interesting because they want to impose their idea of what you're supposed to and not supposed to do.
Well, they want to impose their idea that they've already established in any change to that establishment. So in addition to the public 95 scientific advisors, and these are some of the top women and men in the world, right? That fall on all sides of the political spectrum, all sides of every single spectrum out there. We have another probably 40 advisors. They're like, we love you. You can't say anything because if I submit it, we know these other people don't like me. If I submit a paper, and we totally agree with you and we'll help you. But we submit a paper, they judge my paper, it gets rejected, then I don't get my grant, so then I can't continue my research. I have to fire my postdocs. So it's a complete scam of a system, right? And so we went through this phase where it's like we didn't have enough scientists, we didn't have labs, we didn't have money, we weren't doing anything for conservation. So we went through this whole like philosophical perspective of all these things that people threw at us from the scientific community. And some of our biggest people that hate us are people that we denied their funding.
Of course. Well, the problem is not the scientific community. The problem is weak men. It's this what you see in these squabbles, these like ultra personal squabbles, where like horrible vitriolic statements made about people, like
They're just not happy people.
exactly. It's the same problem with all of life. It's these bitchy little people, these bitchy little monsters, and they have taken over something that's incredibly important in their work. Their work, these bitchy little people, their work is incredibly important.
Yes.
But at the core of their being, they're a bitchy little person.
And they can't, and that is why we don't have flying cars, we don't have mammoths, and until Elon, we were not going to live on Mars, right? And so, like, we didn't have, like, I think
it takes time.
But it doesn't come. But also, academia is really focused on point solutions, not full systems, right? So if you want to go to Mars or you want to bring back a mammoth, you have to design the entire system and you have to innovate across everything.
Right.
Whereas in academia, you are only incentivized to get that piece of paper and get that approved.
Well, it's also you're dealing with grants and enormous amounts of money that gets donated and given to these institutions, along with a whole ideology. Like, it's not just as simple as let's follow data. It's all got to be attached to this very left-leaning, almost preposterous in some aspects, ideology.
Yeah.
And everyone has to say things as a fucking scientist that you know is not true.
You should just follow the scientific method. I'm not scientific, but we should just, and guess what? When new data shows up that, changes your old data, you shouldn't get mad about that. You should celebrate it.
Exactly. Well, also you have to look at all data. Like, I don't want to get into this, but like if you have academics who are legitimate scientists and have published papers who are telling you that a man can be a woman, and which is fine in terms of like who you are. But now when you're having them compete with women in sports, you've entered into nonsense land, and you're the person we're counting on to be the most intelligent person on the subject. You're
Boom, baby. D-Bang. Things people love.
trapped by an ideology that you're now ignoring biology in favor of sociology.
I just wish we could get philosophy. We separate philosophical perspectives from science. We need one of the things that we fight about all the time. Because it's like once we got the scientists and once we got the money and once we proved that we are the most advanced synthetic biology company in the world. Once InQtel, which is the funding arm of the CIA and other governments, started investing in Colossal because of our technologies, and once we started proof points, the last arguments that we have against some of those scientists are philosophical ones, right? They're like, it's not a mammoth.
Right.
It's not a direwolf. And it's like this concept of speciation is a human construct that we are trying to impose on nature that flows more like a river than a rock. And
so are they saying that it's not because it didn't come straight from nature? It's something that you've recreated by piecing this together with that? Like, what are the genes that you had to use to create a direwolf? We didn't totally explain this.
Yeah.
So you have CRISPR, you have these gene editing tools, you have a good sample of DNA. How do you turn that into a wolf?
So you map them next to it, and there was a study that came out about, and once again, this goes back to the status quo of scientists, of academic scientists. There was a paper that came out a few years ago because they didn't have much data. They said that direwolves weren't closer related to wolves. They were closer related to jackals. And that's because at the time, they only had 0.15% of the genome, right? They just didn't have all the data. That's not a negative. They just didn't have all the data. Now we know that they actually were closely related to wolves because we have more data.
Which wolves?
Gray wolves, or the precursor to gray wolves, right? Mm-hmm. So they were closer to the wolf ancestry line in kind of the broader canid group and family group. And so what we found is, so once you do that, we start looking at all these genes and we start to understand what the difference is, and we start to see that in certain parts of the genome that are responsible for size, for muscle, for craniofacial, that there's differences, right? So we can start to map and say, okay, where are the differences between gray wolves and where are the differences between gray wolves and dire wolves? And then with those, we have a lot of different tools that we can then go use to make those changes from the dire wolves in a gray wolf cell line. And so, and then once you go through that process, we didn't talk about this earlier, you do the same process called somatic cell nuclear transfer, which is effectively cloning, where you take the nucleus of one cell, you put that into another egg cell, and then you take that embryo and you insert it into a surrogate.
And is this a 100% dire wolf, or is this a new thing?
So this goes into the philosophical thing.
Right.
So if you look at speciation, right, there's basically, the scientists don't agree on how you classify a species. So you've got certain people that'll say, well, if a species is dictated by something that can't breed, that's literally a definition. Like if this animal can't breed with this animal, then that's its own species. Then you have other people, you have the paleontologists, and some of them love us, like Kenneth Lacavara, who's arguably the number one paleontologist in the world that loves us. But then you have other paleontologists that just hate us. And they do it based solely on tooth morphology, because they argue that's the only thing that is going to be persistent over time. And I asked a paleontologist recently that hates us. I said, if I made a mammoth with that was giant, with pink curly fur, and it had the right tooth morphology, you're saying that based on your scientific papers that you would say that's a mammoth. And she's like, yes, but that doesn't matter. And I'm like, well, and so but they
Why does she hate you?
Because why does anyone, anytime you do anything in this world now that's moderately bold or polarizing, people give you pushback.
But this is heavily bold. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say this is moderately bold. You made 3 fucking dire wolves. That's not moderately bold. It's really kind of one of the craziest things that a human being's ever done.
It's definitely in the realm.
This is right up there with inventing the internet.
Yeah, so when you see, and we have more stuff to come that I think
know.
is equally interesting.
There's people out there. Did you worry that someone is going to get, because this falls into religious realms.
Well, there's philosophical and religious, and so back on speciation, polar bears and brown bears are 2 different species.
Right.
But they mate and produce viable offspring all the time. And a bear expert will tell you that a polar bear is just a aquatic adapted, cold adapted bear, right?
Right.
And so I always ask people that
Their offspring they can have children,
Yes,
right?
yes.
But it's not like a donkey.
Yeah, exactly. So there's different ways to characterize it.
Making a mule.
But there's different ways to say is something, right? And so, we are not the same, right? If I don't know what percent, you probably from 23andMe or something have some percentage Neanderthal. You don't say that you're an admixture or a hybrid. You just say you're a human. You don't really.
Right, but that's a good point though, because Neanderthal, if you want to talk about as different species, just because they could breed with us, God, they're so different.
But that's it. But like I said, there's 6 different ways. There's actually a species definition that's based solely on geographics. And there's a funny paper out there around one species of toad that they built a road through, and the same toads live on 2 sides of the street, and they're different species, and they're the same fucking toad.
Just because there's a road.
Just because we as humans change. It's called geographic isolation of speciation. So it's just crazy. And so the only arguments that we now have is, but is it a mammoth? And it's like, well, then don't call it a mammoth. I asked people, I was like, did you see Jurassic Park? And they're like, yeah. I was like, what was Jurassic Park? What do you think? What was Jurassic Park about to you?
Me?
Yeah. If you're gonna take your kids to see Jurassic Park, what is the movie about?
Dinosaurs.
Is it? Because they took ancient DNA and they mixed it with a bunch of other stuff. Right. Are they dinosaurs, or are they genetically modified animals, GMOs, genetically modified organisms that have inserted genes from lots of different things? Or are they dinosaurs? If they serve the ecological function, this is what's called functional de-extinction. If they serve the ecological function and they have the lost biodiversity and phenotypes that made that animal unique, like the polar and a bear, they're just that animal. So this starts the whole religious and philosophical debates, where it's funny because the scientists who should not fall into these philosophical debates, when they don't like what you're doing, that's what they go to.
So what was the argument? How did they present it?
Oh, it's just by their own definition, they're like, well, it doesn't have enough DNA. So I was like, but the second dire wolf that we have, or the second genome that we have from the tooth has less of the same DNA than the skull. Does that mean that it wasn't a dire wolf? And it just turns into you're missing the point conversation. It's like, I'm just asking questions.
I would like to know the point though. What is her point?
Their point.
What is her overall argument?
The general point of the people is that they want to pick one speciation definition and adhere us to that. And if you do that, no animal, including our animals, will fall into one species, right? It's just people that are using the framework that they set that isn't consistent, kind of against based on the argument that they want to make.
Interesting. So the species is just something.
It's a human construct. It's not.
And it's just a thing if it can breed with another thing.
Well, I mean, that is one definition. There is another definition saying that it's only a species if it can't breed with another thing.
Oh.
So if I genetically modify them to make it where they can't breed with wolves, does that mean they're now their own species? Like, it just gets into this dumb philosophical perspective because we made up this construct.
Right, but as a person who studies biology, which this person is, right, I could kind of understand her perspective where she's like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? How is this group of people with a bunch of money and a bunch of eggheads, how are these geniuses allowed to get together, splice some genes up, and serve up a direwolf? I could see it from her perspective.
Yeah, 100%, right? But I think that if we don't do big, bold things, it's important. You know, one of the things we should definitely show is this.
It's just like the guy in Jurassic Park.
But we should just
basically the same conversation.
Yeah, but John
Don't
Hammond.
worry.
But John Hammond, I don't think that they were really focused on conservation unless there was a subplot that you.
With Asana, AI teammates can help level up your goals by connecting them to relevant projects, so every team knows their role in the bigger picture. Asana, the #1 AI work management platform. Try for free today at asana.com.
Choose to lean into it. Every Mazda is engineered to give you effortless control.
I wake up.
You know, didn't make it the final cut.
No,
we actually
want
are
to make an attraction.
Yeah, so if we could show the Red Wolf, I think that'd be amazing because all the technologies that we made on the path to bring back the direwolf, we want to make available to conservation.
Well, let's explain the red wolf to people because you were saying before I didn't even know how few of them there are.
Yeah, so if you go to the one more, yeah. So this is a red wolf. That's Hope. That's the world's first cloned red wolf. So I've actually made more red wolves than I've made dire wolves. So I've made 4 red wolves, 1 female.
Are you just releasing these fuckers?
No, they're in an ecological preserve as well. And so, but you're gonna die when you hear what I went through on this. So I found out that we try to pair every de-extinction project with a species preservation project. Outside of making all of our technology for free, right? Everything that we make that has an application to conservation, anyone in the world can use to help save animals. They don't pay us a dime. It's all open source. It's all free. We have 48 conservation partners. The team that's running the Northern White Rhino Project, we're their exclusive genetic rescue partner. We're working with elephants in Botswana, we're working with elephants in Kenya. So anybody can use our technologies for free, right? We're working on chytrid, a terrible fungus in Australia. And so, if that's not enough, I found out that, that there's only 15 of those of red wolves back in the wild in North Carolina. So I met with the upcoming governor.
Are they in other states as well, or is it just...
We'll get to that. So they're only recognized by U.S. Fish and Wildlife there. But this incredible woman from Princeton, top of her field, she's one of the top wolf geneticists in the world, Bridget Von Holt, identified a population of wolves in Louisiana that have red wolf-like characteristics. So she started darting them, taking samples, and what she found is they actually have more quote-unquote red wolf in them than the red wolves that are being identified in North Carolina.
And is it part of the problem they're inbreeding with coyotes?
Yeah, but they've all been, like these guys, the ones in North Carolina have all inbred with coyotes. All the red wolves have some coyote in them because
they look like coyotes.
Well, because the ones in North Carolina even look more like coyotes.
Really?
And because the reality is every single species is what's called an admixture. Everything is inbreeding with everything on some level, right? And so everything in life is an admixture. Nothing. It goes back to the Neanderthal.
So this binary idea that we have is silly.
It's a human caused construct, right? And it's insane. So I went to some folks from the last administration, right? And I took some data with me, and I said, hey, we really want to help this Red Wolf program. We don't need any money. We open source all of our technologies, and we've used a technology that's non-invasive for cloning, where we actually take a vial of blood, we isolate what's called endothelial progenitor cells, basically the inner lining of your blood vessel, right? Because there's no nucleus in blood cells. So we catch those, and when we catch those, we then isolate them, we grow them, and we clone from them, right? Which is amazing because if you think about typical cloning from an animal welfare perspective, a lot of times you have to anesthetize the animal, you have to take ear punches, skin biopsies. It's actually pretty it's pretty invasive, terrible process to do cloning. We can simply do it. Every single zoo takes blood from their animals to check certain levels and whatnot. We give blood all the time, and so it's a very non-invasive. It's about as non-invasive as you can get, right? And so we found a way, which we're open sourcing on Tuesday, is open sourcing this model of how you go clone from blood, which is a game changer for biobanking, because now you don't have to go hurt an animal, take pieces of the animal, anesthetize the animal. We can just take bloods and put them in freezers and be able to bring them back or clone them if there's a lack of genetic diversity using this thing. So I went out to Washington with my team. I showed them Hope as a baby and little videos of, and you may have videos of Hope, Jamie. I don't know if it's in the folder. I showed them videos of Hope, and I said, hey, there's only a handful of, we made these 4 wolves from 3 different genetic lines. We made these from 3 different genetic lines, right? So there's actually more genetic diversity in these wolves than what's alive in the population. And we said, we'd like for you to help protect the work that's being done in Louisiana. And then how many wolves would you like us to make using that population, as well as frozen samples that are dead? And we'll just give them to you. There's no cost. Here was the feedback. We need to spend 5 to 6 years on an internal study and spend $22 million to see if it's possible to clone wolves. And I was blown away. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I wasn't very clear.
Yeah, what's up?
This is a cloned wolf. Like, here, you can fly with me to the preserve. You sign an NDA, but you fly with me, sir. And they're like, we need to spend 5 to 6 years and $20+ million to go understand this. To understand this. I was like, we'll give you all of the technology, and if you tell me you want 100 wolves, I'll just make you 100 wolves, and we'll even engineer in more genetic diversity for you. And the response was, we'll get back to you. We tried to have 3 other meetings, no showed and canceled every time when we flew there. I just got back from a meeting with Department of Interior, which Fish and Wildlife rolls up to, and they're very, very focused on innovation, not regulation, which has been pretty amazing.
That's great.
And immediately they said, we celebrate. Doug Burgum, the Secretary of Interior there, who we met with, said, we celebrate. He's a huge conservationist, huge Teddy Roosevelt guy, member of the Explorers Club, and he's like, that we do not have a celebration when animals come off the endangered species list. Only about 3% ever come off, and we're really good at putting them on, and we celebrate putting them on. So we have to do something about this. And if you're saying that we could productionize species, and as long as we have the right support to rewild them, people can use your technologies for free to make more of these different species that are critically endangered, while also biobanking the samples along the way. He's like, why wouldn't we do this? And I was like, well, I met with the previous folks, and they said that we need 5 years and $20 million. That they were going to spend internally. They weren't going to use us to do the feasibility. So they were going to spend it internally on this. And we're like, we'll just do it for free. And he's like, we will completely support the initiative, and we're going to help get you plugged in so you can help biobank our species and also help us support red wolf conservation.
So when will you start reintroducing these
So we just had that meeting last week.
soulless red wolves from hell? You've created a lab. They're gonna start eating people.
And so we're gonna we just met with them last week. So
Well, they're beautiful. God, they're so beautiful.
well, it's just like, why we shouldn't be afraid of innovation, right?
No, but the real question is, where do you stop?
Yeah.
Because 90% of all animals that have ever existed, all species
Yeah.
are extinct.
Yeah.
Like, are we gonna?
I think you focus on the species that are critically endangered and are keystone species, meaning the environment needs them.
Right, but
the
you're
ones that we
bringing them
drove.
back.
But the ones that we drove to extinction, right?
Okay.
So that's
So
where I think
it's
it started.
debatable whether or not we drove dire wolves to extinction. We don't really know what happened 10,000 years ago. I'm inclined to think that when you see the death of 65% of North American megafauna,
Yeah.
that happened really quickly.
Really quickly.
Yeah, I'm inclined to think that these scientists that believe it was an asteroid or a comet impact are correct.
I think it's most likely it's a combination. We do know that when early that anthropologic effects from humans, that when early man went onto a landmass at scale, that we start to see that. We see that in Australia and other places.
Sure.
But to your point, it's much slower. It's much slower.
This is a different thing.
Yeah.
Are you gonna bring back saber-toothed tigers?
Everyone seems to have their favorite animal for us to save, right? Like the
Dire wolves
cheetah.
would be my favorite.
Yeah.
That would be my favorite.
Yeah. Dire wolves.
Switching tax services can be a drag and drop. At H&R Block, switching to us couldn't be quicker or easier with our drag and drop feature. Whether you're switching from TurboTax,
You gotta come. Maybe at some point you see them, but
I want to.
They're amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
they're just beautiful animals.
Yeah.
So saber-tooth tiger is a class. So we put it that as a class. Most commonly, people think of the Smilodon as the saber-tooth tiger. There's not, to date, been really great Smilodon DNA. There is great Homotherium DNA, which is another type of saber-tooth cat.
Oh, I didn't know there was more than one type
Yeah.
of saber-tooth. How many are there?
They classify them differently, based on it. But
Obviously, you've been studying this, so you're thinking about doing it.
I'm not. I mean, we like to study ancient DNA, right? Like one of the things where I think that John Reeves is 100% right is people say there were no saber-toothed tigers in Alaska. That's just an incorrect statement. There were probably no Smilodons there, but there are Homotheriums, which are a saber-toothed cat.
Yeah, he's found things that were not supposed to be.
I've held things in his. I've held a direwolf skull in his. I hope he's fine. He's saying that in his facility.
Yeah, I think he's talked about that.
Yeah.
But they found cave bears, short-faced bears. Wow,
Yeah, so
look at that.
Homotherium is still a saber-toothed cat. But what happens is this goes back to that philosophical perspective. They think that only. So if you look up Smilodon in comparison.
So this has shorter saber teeth, but still.
But
Can you give me that CGI image of it again, Jamie, on the left? That's so fucking cool.
Yeah, and I don't think
I don't think you should bring something like that back, but if you do, I'm going to visit it. I mean, I want to see that thing take down a bite. Look at his paws.
There was what'd you see the direwolf paws?
Bro, but that would be so crazy.
Dude,
now
you should
all of a
have
sudden I
smiled.
want you to do it.
Now,
Give me another large picture of it, Jamie. There's some other pictures of those. So Smilodon's the one that has the largest teeth?
it has the largest known teeth. But when people think of saber-tooth tigers, this is what.
Right. That's a
This
crazy.
is what they think of.
Those are crazy. I wonder why nature wanted to have that.
I mean, probably having to pierce things like mammoth hides and they're quite thick.
It has to be, right? Something where there's a genetic
And their
advantage.
jaw hinges.
Look at that one on the right,
Incredible.
lower right, Jamie. Below that, to the right.
There.
Yeah, right there. Click on that. Look at that, man.
Yeah. And I
CGI is so incredible.
love because we don't, what's amazing? We don't have the DNA from it, so we have no idea what the color pattern is,
Right.
which you can see here, right? It's like, it's got a short tail, it's got a long tail, it's got a leopard, it's got stripes, right?
Right. We don't even know if they had long
We
tail.
don't even know if they could have been white.
Wow, that would be wild.
So we do have, there have been some really well-preserved pups and others in the permafrost of Homotherium.
Whoa.
Have you
And
ever seen
Homotherium we know has that kind of coloration to it.
We don't, I don't want to say we do or don't. We have not done the analysis on that, on Homotherium yet.
Look at that little guy.
We do have the genome of it though.
Wow.
Not that we're going to work
Okay,
on
so
it.
that has brown hair.
Have you seen the American short-faced bear?
Yes.
That's the thing I'm
Many
probably
times.
the most scared of.
Yeah, you can't bring that back.
17 or 18 foot giant
You
bear.
can't bring that back.
We're not working on it, I'm just saying.
But somebody might. That's the problem. There might be some fucking crackhead out there that's got $40 billion that's out of his mind.
Well, I also think that
like some crazy dude who's just got the resources.
That's
Look at that.
That's
You know?
that to me is megalodon scary. That's
Made a lot of money,
That's
so-
a man.
Yeah.
That's a land megalodon.
Well, that is an enormous animal, and they think that's one of the animals that probably prevented people from crossing the Bering Strait.
I read that.
Yeah. It's a theory, but it's a pretty good one.
Yeah, if you knew there was
out
a
there.
lineage of like super, polar bears were out there, I wouldn't
Yeah.
go near it.
And it is essentially a super polar bear,
Yeah.
which is really scary because polar bears
Are terrifying.
and completely carnivorous.
And they don't care. They'll just walk right up to you and kill you.
Oh yeah, there's a great video of these guys that are behind a fence.
Yeah.
Somebody sent it to me yesterday. Oh fuck, I'll find it. I know where it is. Someone sent it to me yesterday of these guys that are right behind a fence where this polar bear is trying to get through the fence. There's 3 of them, and they're talking to it like, hey big guy, you can't come in here. Hey fella.
And it's just calmly walking towards like, I'm gonna get in there.
Exactly. Yeah. It's.
All
right, what's up, Gigi?
Very spooky. Well, they're spooky because they don't.
Oh, what's up,
eat
guys?
anything.
Sorry, I've been like
So we're on the menu.
totally into this.
All humans are on the menu. Anything that walks and breathes is on the menu.
What's up? Thanks, Presley.
Shit. It'll take me a few
Let me
minutes.
browse through all these real
Sorry.
quick.
Jamie, pause for a second. Let me find this because it's good.
Laura.
I'll send it to you. So.
What's up, Froggy?
Looks like they're.
Yeah, it's a dragon.
I don't know where they are.
What's up, GG again? It's been all right. I
Guys, here,
just
give me some
went to the gym and kind of
bears.
made breakfast
It's an
and
oil rig.
did a
So
few
it's
other
probably Canada.
things.
Look at these guys.
And just started painting this. This has taken a couple hours. This has already been 2 hours.
Sound. Yeah.
Just working on coloring
They're
it.
just trying to eat you.
So
Look at this.
There's 2 more behind it.
Yeah. Hey. Go on.
Go on.
Go on.
Probably not gonna work.
They're just trying to figure out how to get in to eat you. Hey, sweetheart. Hey. Sweetheart. Sweetheart wants to rip your liver out. Hey. Go on.
I
They're
bet
so beautiful.
They are beautiful.
It's interesting that they're the most dangerous ones because they're the ones we use for Coca-Cola and Klondike bars.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild, though?
You have them just like playing around in the snow, but they're actually terrifying.
Yeah, you were saying the younger dryas is really interesting. It's very, very interesting because it's a fairly new theory and explains a lot, and especially when you look at the mass extinction that did take place during that time. I would love to have seen what it looked like when all those animals were around. Like what was we kind of have a sense of what, because of safaris and videos, we know what it looks like when lions are interacting with wildebeest in Africa. Like, what did it look like in Kansas?
Like
15,000 years ago. Yeah, like what was it like?
You know, there's a extinct bison species that is the bison latifrons. Have you seen those guys?
Yeah.
They have like 8 foot long Texas Longhorns on like super HGH like bison.
Yeah, our bison are small compared to the extinct bisons, right? Were they the largest of the North American bisons?
Yeah. The bison latifrons was.
See if we can get a photo of that. Yeah. I didn't know about them until a few years ago.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a thing. There were so many different things. Giant sloths. There's the saber-toothed tiger, the American lion, which is...
There's an American cheetah.
Yes.
The American cheetah is, we actually have a full genome of it. And then there was also one of my favorite animals, which is kind of a weird one, probably on the list since we're talking about dire wolves and saber-toothed tigers.
They all look cool, guys.
Stellar sea cow.
No. What is that?
Think of like a
painting is a new thing now. Yeah, we'll do some more painting, guys.
A large whale.
What?
Yeah.
Just the video games sometimes get frustrating, and it's like during winter it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's really cold. You know what I mean?
When was that? We killed them all, huh?
Yeah, we
probably turned them into candles or something.
Yeah, or just burn their fat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it was actually really
largest.
This
Serenian.
Like it's really nice to game during the winter because I can sit there and be kind of warm. You know what I mean? But
wow.
Yeah, and we actually have
it starts to warm up and it gets like harder to like sit there. Just
It was hugely important to the kelp forest of the Pacific Northwest. It was great. It's not scary. It's huge. It's like
but then if you bring that back, why wouldn't you bring back a megalodon?
There is no megalodon DNA.
There's none?
No. I will say that the CEO of the largest, the president and CEO of the largest free museum in America, really wants me to do the megalodon, but he's like, I can never say that publicly.
I think he just outed him.
Yeah, but there's a lot of museums. I could be wrong on the size. Yeah, whatever. He's great though. But there is no DNA.
It would have to eat a lot, and
but
we already killed everything in the ocean.
So one of the things that's weird and interesting that we're also working on is artificial wombs at Colossal. Because if you want to get to this world where you could productionize endangered species like northern white rhinos, instead of having to use surrogates for an animal welfare perspective, if you can get to the point that you can engineer genetic diversity into 200 northern white rhinos, grow them in labs and bags, and then you can control that population very, very well. You can then reintroduce them, with folks in the field that are the rewilding experts, right? And so we were really not focusing on we kind of rely on third parties on the rewilding modeling, and all of our, our 48 conservation partners. We were really just kind of focused on the kind of the core science that supports their initiatives. But if we are successful with our artificial wombs, and we are quite far on that project, that I would not be surprised if eventually you see we have to get a mouse first. But if a mouse
have you guys had these conversations where you sit down, you go, how does this scale outward? What does this look like? This technology in 100 years? Did we just fuck up?
No, I think that if you look at the birthing crisis that we're in kind of population decline.
Now I just have to do the eyes.
I think that, you look at
The hardest
global,
part.
like people
Here, let me give you guys a bit of
having
loot.
kids later, IVF clinics, people freezing their embryos. All of that's massively on the on the increase. It's all going up
Right.
to the right, right? And we also know that like globally, like sperm and fertility and others is going.
Just got to
down
figure out what to do with
right? So
the
it's not a
eyes.
good look for the future of humanity in general. And so I think though, especially, and then we also have philosophical and you have religious, you have philosophical, and then you have socio issues, right? That people have different perspectives on, like having kids, same-sex couples, all these things. So we at Colossal have kind of made this mandate that we're not going to work on humans, right? Because it gets too weird. We get asked the Neanderthal and the dinosaur question every fucking day. So we're just not going to like bridge that gap. What we'll do is spin out those technologies. But I do think it is harder to grow a rhino in a artificial womb or exogenous development system than it is a human. Not ethically or through an FDA process, but it is scientifically harder to gestate some of the animals we're trying to gestate ex utero. So I do think that some of those technologies could make it eventually into the human population.
That's where it gets really weird, right? Like you could create a child with no mother or father.
Does he look like he knows something?
I think so. Optional.
Make one blue and make one green. The problem is that eyes just in general, like I don't want to just put color on it. I gotta like shade it somehow, you know what I mean? I gotta be able to do that.
Yeah, but I mean, the people that are skeptical about this stuff, this is what they point to. It's like what is involved in the creation of life.
Even if I do them different colors and stuff like that, I gotta like.
And then
Eyes are just hard to make look good.
Is born. They raise the child. It gets some of their behavior characteristics. It gets the genetics, and then we integrate it into a community. And there's life. But if you could just make life without any of that, like what is that? Where's that? You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, it's a great philosophy.
How much of the child's development is taking place while it's in the mother and sharing
that shared experience, the hormonal cues and whatnot?
Yes.
I wouldn't have a child.
When I drew it, I just drew it. You know what I mean? I didn't like think about anything, which is kind of why I had to change some things on it. But
no connection. People, they come out of the gate. Ted Kaczynski, all fucked up. Like really,
it's a fair point.
We don't know what the process is while a baby is inside of a woman's body.
And there's people that are working on this technology specifically for humans. Like right now, we're focusing on it for extinct species and endangered animals.
But the question was, when this scales out, when you scale out 100 years from now, like what did you just do?
Well, my biggest thing that I think would be helpful is if we had a world where we if Colossal gets ultimate success,
dang dude,
I'd say that we've
killed some time on this.
Animals back into their natural habitat. We've revitalized these ecosystems that including your picture of what did the Arctic look like back in the day. Like how do we have that? Because that was actually a crazy. If you look at the work that's been done in Pleistocene Park by Sergei and Nikita Zimov, they've actually shown that rewilding northern Siberia with cold-tolerant megafauna actually can revitalize the ecosystem. It can add more biodiversity. It can actually keep the ground temperatures colder in the winter, so it sequesters more carbon. So I think this idea of nature-based and living with nature in an ecological model is something that I hope that we are successful at, and I hope that Colossal is also successful at removing animals from the endangered species list.
So what you were talking about mammoths specifically in the study that showed that it would help.
But they've already done it with like muskox, horses, and a few other species up there. So they're doing it right now. They've been doing it for over 20 years.
And there was some talk about eventually doing this with mammoths and then releasing those mammoths into Siberia.
Yeah, that was something that Larry or that Sergei and Nikita Zimov wanted to do.
How long before some Russian oligarch hunts a mammoth?
Yeah, I mean, look, given the geopolitical, we see, going back to your wolf example, we see boundaries and geopolitical lines, right? The animals don't, right? And so we will probably not rewild our first mammoths in Siberia for many reasons.
But you think you will rewild a mammoth?
Yeah, I think our goal, like, not to if Jamie, if you look at colossal.com Euphoric/Tasmania, for example, we actually build working groups with folks around like everyone from academia to private landowners to indigenous people groups, governments, to understand like we don't have a thylacine. I think we'll have a thylacine in the next 8 years. I really do. I think based on where we are, current course of speed, there's 70 million years of genetic divergence between a fat-tailed dunart, which is like a mouse-sized marsupial, and a wolf in this, right? But we actually, if you just kind of scroll through into the people.
So it's a wolf-like marsupial.
Yeah.
So does it actually have a pouch that
it does. It actually also has a backward pouch. So most pouches, other than like the wombat, are forward-facing.
Mm-hmm.
It is backwards because because it was a burrowing animal.
Ah,
so that way you weren't
protect
like
the babies.
Yeah, like absolutely suffocate them.
God, nature's fascinating.
But if you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see, and just like if you just do a quick scroll, you'll see that we actually have gone out and partnered with all these different groups. Even though we don't have thylacines, we have quarterly meetings in Tasmania around rewilding the thylacine in one of the groups that we have involved in it is the Logging Commission. It's going back to your, how do we live with nature, kind of like with your example with the cattlemen and the ranchers. Well, the biggest economic driver right now in Tasmania is actually the Logging Commission. So if you think that you're going to reintroduce an animal back without them or their lobbyists having into the forest, without them having a perspective, then I think that's just a naive way to look at the world. And so going back to like the thylacine and mammoths and others, we try to build these working groups ahead of time so that people can get excited about, what are the challenges? What are the unintended consequences? And that's not our job to persuade them. It's just our job to kind of listen to them and then figure it out. And, that approach of like listening to our critics and listening and being inclusive in these communities has helped us, I think, dramatically think through what our rewilding strategies are.
So when you have a rewilding strategy, what experts do you bring in to have this discussion of what kind of an impact this could? I mean, you haven't done any rewilding. Let's be clear to everybody.
Yes.
They're not releasing dire wolves.
And the woolly mice are not getting released.
Right.
Yes.
So this is all theoretical.
Yes.
But if you do have one, what would be what would you look at specifically? How do you take into account all the different species? Do you take into account, like with the thylacine particularly, because it's a large predator, the amount of animals it's going to eat?
Right.
These animals are not conditioned, they haven't evolved to be around this thing. It's been almost 100 years since the last one was there.
So on the evolve part, this is actually kind of weird. So you do ecological field studies. So you work with ecologists, conservationists, predator experts, like people that understand predation, people that understand the land. So you have to work with these kind of big working groups. We have a project going on right now in central Tasmania, which is amazing. And this, the old school like Looney Tunes, like Wile E. Coyote, where he's like, and he like goes through a wall and there's like a hole, or the Kool-Aid Man, right? If you had that cutout, we made cutouts and painted them of thylacines, but also of cats and dogs and other things, and wolves and other things, and we put them out near camera traps in central Tasmania. And when we've reviewed the data, you'll have like a quoll or a wombat or one of these animals kind of walking through, or even a wallaby kind of walking through, and they'll see a cat, and they'll kind of look at it. When they see, and remember, to your point, this is for them is multiple generations, right? Because these animals don't live hundreds of years. And so when they see the cutout and shape and the coloration and size of a thylacine, they freeze, and they absolutely freak out.
Wow.
Yeah. So we've been collecting this data for 18 months, and we're publishing a paper on it.
That is so cool.
There's like generational trauma that is baked in to their DNA to avoid a thylacine.
What's the only way they survive? I mean, without a language to pass down information,
There you go, one blue, one green.
It makes you wonder, like, how much of that is in us? Like, when people have a phidiophobia, or arachnophobia, fear of snakes and spiders, like, what is that from? Like, because it's crippling. I've seen people that have crippling fear of spiders, where it doesn't even make any sense. Well, somebody got almost killed by a spider, and that's inside of them.
Right.
Those genes passed on. and then you see
And
a
you
spider,
freak out,
just-
yeah.
they freak out, man. When I was doing Fear Factor, if we found out that someone had a fear of spiders or a fear of snakes, guess what?
That was on the show.
That's on the show.
Yeah,
And
that's like me in Heights. It's like every episode you had back in the day of Heights.
That's because you're smart.
Yeah, it's like
That's
fucking
just-
terrifying. I'm like,
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm in a fucking hotel and I'm on like the 50th floor,
Yeah.
like, why?
Why? Yeah.
Why?
Like, so I don't have like road noise. I'm like, but it's gonna be really hard to get out of
This
here.
is so sketchy.
Yeah.
It's so scary.
This thing looks weird,
Just, like,
doesn't it?
moves a little bit when it-
Like,
when
I
yeah.
swear I can, like,
It is. Oh, my toilet water's shaking.
it like pops out of different,
Here?
Yeah, Jamie
Oh, yeah.
lives, he lives way up high. Jamie sends me pictures from his house. I freak out. Like, no.
No, I can't.
No.
Doesn't it like
I just
look weird, kind of?
like to be underground.
Well, I hate flying too, which sucks because I fly.
Yeah, I don't like it.
I fly all the time.
I'm just counting on these fucking screws and bolts and shit.
Yeah, because like the worst is like when you're sitting there, and there's now been like these renders of planes that have like glass or plexiglass. I'm like, I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
I get mad if I get on a plane and the people don't shut the window size. Like I don't like. I'm in the bowl. I'm in the tube.
Yeah,
It's
just close
lit
your
on
eyes.
fire. I just want to go. Yeah, I get.
Just
Because if
ram
you
me.
think about the point where you're sitting in a chair and then you look down and you have a floor, you're like, that's not. There's not that much. There's like 10,000 feet. You know, 3,000 feet below me. It's
When
not
you
like-
see something like the one that happened in Canada where the plane flipped upside down too, you just like that. You can't get that one out of your
a
head.
Delta Airlines flight.
Yeah.
It wasn't like
Yeah, whoopsies.
crazy
Yeah.
airline you've never heard
It
of.
was a person who was not that good at flying and kind of recent.
Yeah,
Like, hey,
yeah,
hire someone better.
yeah.
This
And I
is
fly,
crazy.
and I go to DC a decent amount, and so like the whole DC thing like absolutely freaked me out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes I stay at some of those hotels that are right on the river, and you see the choppers fly. You see the choppers fly. You see the choppers fly.
That's the DC one.
But look how much the water's shaking at this pool.
Oh yeah. Did you see the one in Thailand?
This is where it was.
Oh, did you see the water that's flying off the roofs
Yeah,
in Thailand?
in the
Flying off the roofs where you see like from the ground, it looks like it's raining. It's crazy.
Anyways.
Might be done with
well,
it.
that would be the last day I would spend in that fucking room.
yeah, you're out.
Like that's it.
It's like if I saw-
done. Bye.
If I saw a ghost, I'm like, all right, I'm moving.
Yeah, bye. Maybe the ghost is cool. I'm not totally scared of ghosts because I don't think ghosts will ever kill anybody. You know, I'm scared of thylacines.
I'm not scared of thylacines.
I'm not.
They start out the size of a grain of rice.
I'm
You
not
just gotta be
scared.
really nice to them.
So does everything.
It's kind of like AI. You gotta be really nice to it.
Yes.
I
I
saw a great gift. I saw this great image on X the other day that is like, it's got all the robots lining up to kill humans, and it's like, no, not this one. It said thank you in its request.
oh boy.
So I was like, I'm gonna be very nice on all of my requests on Croc.
Well, I have a weird situation going on at my house because I have chickens, but I eat chicken. And I don't eat the chickens that I have. I eat their eggs.
Yeah.
But they're cute. I'm like, hey girls, what's up, ladies?
Yeah.
Like, I have no desire to harm them. I
Yeah.
try to protect them. If I'm driving on the driveway and one of them is in the middle of the driveway, I have to be very slow and let her cross. But I eat chicken.
Did you see that study that came out a couple weeks ago that having 2 eggs? I'm gonna get the numbers wrong, but you have 2 eggs. If you have at least 2 eggs a week, that it lowers the probability of Alzheimer's by like 47%.
Yeah. It turns out Alzheimer's connected to a lot of stuff that's in
Or
our diet.
inflammation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
They're
Unfortunately.
saying that.
Trying to look at it through my
Gary said
camera.
it
What
was,
does it look like?
I think it was Gary that was.
It's like I'm too used to it, you know, to like see it. I feel like
a more popular belief that it's diabetes type 3.
Yes.
it's cool though.
Yeah, I've heard that.
So,
Started
Which
off
is
with just
really
a pencil. I knew it was gonna be work to do it.
But
Like
it's just
it was like I was like totally hesitating to
because
like
you're
do
on
it.
A health path.
Yeah.
You know, and you feel much better.
I feel incredible. I mean, I did.
Isn't it nuts? How
Yeah,
many people are just running around out there feeling like shit?
Well, I was. I mean, part of the reason I started Colossal, I mean, I told you the story about how I got with George, but before that, I built a handful of different technology companies. My last company was a satellite software and defense company, and was building it, running it, and this was in late 2019, early 2020. I had to be in Tokyo and I had to be in Shanghai. So I came back. I went to CES, the big consumer electronics show in Vegas. Saw everyone in the world, right, that's there, because it's stupid big. A week and a half later, I'm in NASA Marshall with the director there, because we were doing some work for NASA at the time at my last company. And I was with one of my number two of the company, this guy named Craig, who's our chief strategy officer. He was coughing, he wasn't feeling well. We both were kind of feeling like shit. I was like, oh, we've been on the road a lot, we've been drinking. We came back on a Friday. On Friday night, we were going back on Slack around talking about aliens and shit. And then the next day, I got a call from his wife that he had a sudden cardiac event.
Oh, Jesus.
And so that for me was a big wake up call because I got really sick during COVID. Like I was on that early strain of
I probably should
COVID.
just leave it
There's
alone,
nothing
you know what I
wrong with
mean?
it.
Like,
Anyone tells
I want to
you,
like
there's
touch more stuff on it,
multiple
but
things that came out of that thing, and so I got super sick, and you know, I now rarely drink. I rarely have caffeine. You know, I've kind of tried to cut out stuff. I exercise regularly, and looking at all these things that people think are weird or that used to be weird or alternative, like, you know, a dry sauna, a cold plunge, red light. I do that every day now.
Every day.
Every day.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's awesome, man. You're lifting weights too?
Yeah, lifting weights.
a lot of
regimen,
colors.
everything.
That's so important.
Yeah.
So important, and I tell people,
Wait for it to dry. This stuff doesn't dry. What you have to do is like you have to spray.
Your tissue.
So it's like I'll show you where it comes from. So like,
9-month-old son, right? And he,
see
like,
that right there?
And
All those. They're like oil pastels.
That's a sad day. You know?
So it's
And
oil.
I kind of got in this mindset of like.
So what you have to do is you have to get like
older that are in wheelchairs
a
that
spray
can't walk.
and
It's
spray
not a
over it,
blessing
and
to
then it
walk.
will harden over the top of it.
Why would I squander that blessing? Why would I not like lean into it?
Yeah,
and
I
make
just
sure
want to
that
like
when
I want to
die,
like
can walk?
I don't know
It's a
fix
blessing to be
things
healthy.
more, but
It's
it's
a
probably
blessing.
just fine. I
It's
should probably
we're
just leave it
so
alone.
concerned about our day-to-day
You know?
existence.
Yeah.
That we
But
lose
there it
track
is,
of this
guys.
Big picture.
Yeah.
You have the opportunity to do something that if it wasn't possible, you would wish it was possible, and that
I
is
knew it was gonna
healthier.
take a
Like,
while.
If it wasn't possible, if we just
Took
existed
3
in a
hours.
state, and whatever that state was, there's no medicine that could fix it, there's no exercise that could fix it, diet doesn't change
Yeah.
it. This is just who you are.
At least we
as
got to
a
listen to
being,
Joe
and
Rogan.
it goes away. But that's not even remotely true. It's actually the opposite. There's friends that I have that are my age, and they look like they're my dad.
Yeah.
And that's because they've been drinking and smoking and sleeping late and fucking off their whole life and no exercise at all, and your body deteriorates.
Yeah, and I'm not like I'm on the journey. I'm not at the end, right? It is a constant journey.
I'm on the journey.
Yeah, but
We're
it's-
all on the
But
journey.
like
There's no
since I
end.
started working with Gary, like I did. Have you seen this function test? Have you done the function test?
What is the function test?
It's like function health. It's like it's just a suit. It's just all, if you go to your doctor, like I do quarterly blood work, but then I also then do this, the function test, which is just a massively all-encompassing test of blood. It's like 2 tests twice a year. And so I do that test, and after working with Gary for a while, you know, now my biological age, or my actual age is 43. My biological age is 35.
That's amazing.
But it's just been working for a year with Gary, taking the right supplements, getting the right routine, giving myself nutrients. You know, I buy, and you can actually taste the difference, right? Like if you go to a store and get a steak or chicken, you even if it's like free range and all that shit, it tastes great. It tastes better than like something that you buy just that's terrible at a store. But when you order from some of these like true like Amish places and in places that have actually like grown the food like completely natural, that doesn't have just a fake pre-purchased certified organic, you can taste the difference in the nutrient density. It's insane. And
Have you had a lot of wild game?
Yeah, so that's what I order now. So I order a bunch. So I do elk steaks. I do a lot of steaks from.
All right, guys, I'm probably gonna end the stream.
That Gary.
All right.
Recommended.
I'm probably gonna end the stream now.
Do they have bison?
But,
have bison
I mean,
too.
there it
Yeah,
is.
Parker pastures. They're just like when I have a steak from these guys, like it's been like you can taste it. And I've had like my brother-in-law and my father-in-law had friends. I was like, no, we're gonna try these steaks out of the freezer. And I was like, we're not just gonna buy
But
something.
it looks different.
It looks different. Yeah, it looks different.
Like,
Coloration.
you get a pink steak from the grocery store,
Yeah.
which is fine. You cook it, it tastes great. But if you get a grass-fed, grass-finished steak, like
grass
there's a lot-
finished, 100%.
A lot of ranches out here,
Yeah.
you know, Texas is a great place, and there's a lot of ranches out here that use regenerative agriculture, and they sell the animals that they kill, and it's like a dark red meat.
Yeah, it looks completely different, but
Yeah,
the
it
taste
tastes different.
you want to eat more of it. Like I feel full, but I want to finish it, and I also feel like my body likes this because it's getting shit that it hasn't been getting.
You feel better when you eat it. Like, you literally feel energized.
Yeah.
You know, I've given people elk before, and
Yeah.
one of the things they say is like, "Do you have so much energy?" I'm like, "Yeah.
Yes.
Welcome to my world."
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It is
Okay.
so great. But that was.
I'm gonna head out, guys. Thanks for watching.
One of the things that we got
And
asked
I'll see
by
you guys next time, probably at the gym in an hour.
Like not
So
not
bye.
by, like,
Thanks.
just random people.